Yes, they can drop off. They are making a statement, so we'd like them to be able to do that.
Can you hear? It's Pat.
Yep, Pat, you're live.
And I can't start my video because the host has disabled it.
Yes, they can drop off. Correct.
Hi, Tammy. This is Margaret. I'm here.
All right.
Okay, great, Margaret. Thank you so much.
And Lucian, we are live on YouTube now.
So the only thing I would like to check is whether or not we have Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer on, Senator Kavanagh. Thank you, Councilmember Chin. You are on. And I see Luke Wolf is on, and I see you, Lean. So I just need to ensure that Gail and Senator Kavanagh are here, and then we can rock.
Hi, Tammy. I am here. I'm getting a message that it says the host needs to start my video, but I'm here if you can hear me.
I can hear you, so that's perfect. I don't have a video either at this point.
Okay, great.
Same for me. It's Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much. April, are you going to turn video on for panelists?
Let me see here. Yes, I can do that. Working on that now.
Thank you.
It's a very old one, so it'd be preferable.
I don't know, Yulian, the picture still looks nice.
There we go.
For those who have joined, it is 6:03. This is Manhattan Community Board 1. We are hosting a special meeting this evening outside of our normal agendas and business, working and hosting with DHS and Project Renewal. I want to wait to ensure that we've got everything technologically going because we are on Zoom versus our normal WebEx platform. And then we will be in great shape.
I'm just seeing in the chat right now that Zoom has reached capacity, so a lot of people are unable to join.
Yes, they can go to YouTube Live. It will redirect them to the YouTube Live.
Exactly. All right. So
I still don't have any video, April.
Oh, but everyone else was able to start their video. Maybe try again.
Let's see. How do I do that? What do I do? Start video. Ah, there we go. Thank you.
Okay. Everybody ready? All right, here we go. So we're going to get started. I want to welcome everybody to Community Board 1's presentation and dialogue. We want to start the meeting off with the acknowledgement that we would like to have some decorum and ground rules on here. We do have groups of panelists who are all going to be able to speak for 2 minutes, and the electeds. We were advised a short while ago that DHS must leave by 8 p.m. So we're going to try and run a very tight ship. If questions have been answered, please don't ask the same one. We are trying to group people together. We got literally hundreds of questions online, which we are going to try and we have shared with DHS, and we're hoping going to get some answers to tonight. Questions will continue to roll in. We're at 350 people thus far who have sent us questions, not including the people who are on the Zoom call with us. We do have bandwidth limitations with the call tonight. We recognize that. So we will have 500 participants who are in the attendee list, the panelists, and then everyone else will be able to be on the YouTube live stream, and you will still be able to have questions input there. Again, we're going to try and go as quickly as we can. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. If the question's been asked, please don't ask it again. And with that, I am going to start. I am chair of Community Board 1, moderating tonight to host Project Renewal and DHS with Pat Moore, who is our chair of the Quality of Life Committee. This meeting came about quite shortly because we were, and pardon my expression, pipe bombed information Friday night with from the media. No notification came to Community Board 1, no facts, no input, no engagement, nothing. So as a chair of Community Board 1, the choices of the city to destabilize and dehumanize a group who are succeeding well in a location that they currently have, and to put them through this is upsetting to start with. The fact that this will do nothing, the opening of this shelter, to address the people in our community who are part of Community Board 1 is something that is untenable to us in Community Board 1. We want to help the people who are on the street here. We want to be able to provide options for people who, through the rent moratorium goes away, eviction moratorium, if they're in Community Board 1 with their families, we want them to be able to stay here. Adding people here without helping the people who are existing here does not seem fair to us, and shows that truly this mayor is making a decision, and I'm putting it back on the mayor, not the agency who is facilitating, but again, they have to answer for it as well, that we're not prioritizing keeping a stabilized group in a position. This isn't about humanity. This is not about care. This is about pitting one community board against the other, which as a community board leader, I completely disagree with. There is no less value to the people in Community Board 1 than there are to Community Board 7. There is no less value to the homeless people in Community Board 1 than there are in Community Board 7. So looking for a holistic approach that really takes into account everybody, and I'm done with my time. So I'll get off my soapbox. With that, I want to thank everybody who has come and recognize Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, because you do represent all our community boards.
Well, thank you very much,
Gail?
Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I want to thank Pat Moore. And I want to say you have been stellar in dealing with this issue. And I also want to say that we'll have a conversation with Project Renewal, but I know they have another program that has been successful in District 1, and they are an excellent organization. So it's not about them, it's not about the men. I think you have heard me say over and over again that at the beginning of July 27th and the following time in Board 7, there were a lot of issues when, without any notification, same thing, the folks were moved from a hotel on 51st Street up to the 79th Street Hotel Lucerne. And there were a lot of issues. There was drug dealing. The Project Renewal did not have time to put excellent services into the hotel. The hotel has very little space. It has a small community room. We asked the city to do a fix up of the roof garden. No, 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 we don't do that. And we won't make the owner do that. So there's no space except out on the street. For 3 weeks, it was really challenging. And I think that's what upset some of the residents of the Upper West Side. I will tell you that Project Renewal has made great strides with excellent services in the hotel, etc. And guess what? As you have heard, as members of Community Board 1, and the reason that I am upset is that Goddard Riverside Community Center, a settlement house, you know, one of the excellent 100-year-old settlement houses, board members wrote massive checks, individual checks to the tune of between $250,000 and $500,000. And they said to the Hotel Lucerne and to the men, we have, and I have the proposal right here, we have outdoor space, indoor space, and we can do a 6-day-a-week program. We can provide jobs through our Green Keepers program, and we will do it from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. And it's right near the hotel. So that was on the table. It's no longer on the table if they move. And I have to say, that's what we all want. We want that kind of program. It's like a dream come true. Private money, spend it correctly, and give these men the kinds of support that they need. So I have to say, that's why I am incredibly upset about the move, because that kind of offer doesn't come around. It cannot happen from downtown. It doesn't work to go uptown, etc. So I'm very opposed to the move. I have said this from the beginning. I think that the men that were arrested would have decreased the population, and to be honest with you, taken out those who perhaps should not be in a hotel to start with. And the population is down, it's stable, the men know the neighborhood. And here's an offer that nobody provides. The city of New York certainly does not provide that kind of money and that kind of program. So because I know you want to hear from others, I just want to say it is a crime from my perspective for the city to let that money just disappear and say, sorry, we're not interested, we're going to move. And so that's why I'm opposed to it. And I appreciate very much the fact that this discussion is taking place, But I just want people downtown to know, we arranged this, we made the offer, and if they move, they can't take advantage of it, and it's a crime. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Borough President. I will, when DHS addresses and gives their part, perhaps they can answer that part. I'd like to move next to Senator Kavanagh.
Great. Thank you very much, Tammy. Thank you, Pat Moore. Thank you for everybody at Community Board 1. You know, I have to say during this pandemic, it's been an effort to keep the normal channels of community engagement up and running, and CB1 has done a great job of that, and that is why your community board is ready to take this on in this technically sophisticated way. And I can tell you, I do a lot of community boards, and many of them are not functioning this smoothly, especially in a borough that Borough President Gail Brewer isn't responsible for. That I also represent. But I also just want to acknowledge, you know, Gail, Assemblymember Yuli New, Councilmember Chin, Controller Scott Stringer, who I think is represented, and other distinguished guests. You know, as soon as we got the similar last minute word, really after the you know, we got phone calls, you know, the end of the day on Friday about this, all of the elected officials immediately consulted with each other, immediately consulted the community board, because we do want to work together to make sure we get the best outcome for all concerned here. You know, I want to just emphasize there are two very distinct issues here. One is whether the city should be moving this particular group of men from this particular facility at the Lucerne on the Upper West Side to the location that they are proposing without prior notice on Wall Street and William. The second issue is a longer term question about what we can do to create this kind of capacity for services in our district. And I want to emphasize that they're very distinct. You can both have tremendous, you know, sympathy for these men and the work that we want to do to help them stabilize themselves and, you know, get into permanent housing and live their lives, and also be very skeptical about what the city is proposing, particularly here. So we want to address, the city has described this as an emergency. They want to move very quickly to do this. We should have a longer term conversation about what is going to happen with that Radisson site and what is best for this community, including, as Tammy Meltzer mentioned, the many people who are already homeless and already living in our communities, often, you know, in the streets and on the sidewalks of all of the community neighborhoods in Community Board 1. So I join Gail in expressing you know, real concern that the city is walking away from something after a lot of effort was made to make it work, after a lot of services were put in place, after a tremendous effort by a provider that does great work in other sites I'm familiar with as well. And also, just again, for the city to do this on an emergency basis without, you know, proper consultation and without really articulating a service or policy reason why this makes sense. This seems very much a matter of getting out of one facility to get into another because of you know, some opposition in the neighborhood around the existing facility. So I look forward to the conversation today. I do thank the representatives from DHS, who I think are, you know, going to face challenging questions tonight, but we appreciate your being here to answer those, and you know, let's get to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Kavanagh. Councilmember Chin, you're next. And we're going to really try and be tight on time. So thank you.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you to everyone in Community Board 1 for hosting this. Just like my colleague have said, you know, we heard about it on Friday. And I also spoken to my colleague, Councilmember Rosenthal, who represent the area on the Upper West Side. The electeds on the Upper West Side, they are standing together against the move because it is unconscionable for the city to move these residents again. They've been moved several times in the last 6 months and they were not consulted. They need stability. You know, and I think Community Board when a lot of residents, look, we welcome more shelter opportunity in Community Board 1 because we have a large homeless population here that needs the service. But frankly speaking, a threat of a lawsuit is not a good reason to move those residents from the Upper West Side to Lower Manhattan or to any other neighborhood. It is not an emergency. I want to make sure that we can sit down with the city and plan for a shelter that can help families and people in need in Lower Manhattan. And that's something that we can work towards. Look, all of us have to be compassionate and deal with humanity to deal with the vulnerable homeless population. It's all our responsibility. But the city needs to work with us. And I thank all the members of Community Board 1, and I look forward to working together with Project Renewal, all the providers, and the city on this. Thank you.
Margaret, thank you so much. And you hit it right on the nail on the head. We want to move quickly to Assemblymember Yuli New. You can tell I'm going city, state, not our typical order, but this is not a typical night.
Yeah, I know.
Assemblymember.
It's great to hear, especially Gail's perspective. And I just wanted to say that actually when we heard on Friday night, I heard on Friday night at like 8:30 p.m. So I called Brian and Gail immediately because I was wondering what their perspectives were. I also texted Margaret to see if she was available, but I wanted to be able to see if we could actually get on the same page. I didn't know the background on what was going on and why it was moving so quickly. We were all very puzzled about why it constituted an emergency, especially when the homeless neighbors that we have up in the Upper West Side were doing well there. And so I felt like that, really Gail was able to kind of highlight some of the biggest factors in these decisions that are being made. And I think that we really should heed some of her advice here. And so I want to echo her sentiments. I also want to echo Brian's concerns and sentiments on why the community was not really given a lot of input and leeway into kind of at least getting some information about what was happening. So I wanted to see the rest of my time to community to speak, because I know that we're in a rush here. So I would like to make sure that we actually get to hear everybody speaking. Thank you. Thank you again, Tammy, for chairing all of us.
Thank you, Assemblymember. I believe Scott Stringer's office has a statement. So Luke Wolf, are you here, or is it Jessica?
I'm here. I'm Luke Wolf from Comptroller Stringer's office. I'll be reading a brief statement. Thank you to Community Board 1 for putting this forum together. I want to start by talking about who this conversation should be about, which is the 235 New Yorkers experiencing homelessness who are at the Lucerne on the Upper West Side. These residents, for their own safety, were moved out of the shelter at the start of the pandemic, moved again in late July, and now face the reality of moving a third time in 7 months, each time their lives thrown into disarray. How this administration has treated these men as if they are the problem is cruel and inexcusable, and a way to deflect from the real issue we face, that this is an administration that does not have a plan to address homelessness. They did not before the pandemic, when there were 66,000 homeless New Yorkers, half of them children, and they do not now. We need to make sure that as a city, we do everything we can to take care of the most vulnerable among us, especially right now when times are hard. And right now, that means keeping these individuals experiencing homelessness at the Lucerne. This move is not grounded in public health rationale. It is not in the best interest of these men, nor the provider who serves them, and only emboldens other communities to resist instead of welcoming their fellow New Yorkers. Is the situation at Lucerne perfect? Of course not, but substantial progress is being made, lines of communication have been opened, and problems are being resolved. Community leaders, elected officials, and Project Renewal have been working hand in hand to address community concerns and provide the residents with the support services they needed. This is not to say that every community does not need to do their part. Comptroller Stringer would welcome a shelter in Community Board 1 and believes that all communities need to be part of the solution. However, this administration has acted without transparency, disregarding community engagement, and caving to one group of residents only to move the situation to another neighborhood is inexcusable and a failure of leadership. We all need to come together now to send a message to the mayor that we are not okay with this administration playing political games when lives are at stake. We need a plan to address homelessness, build low-income housing, and work with communities, and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. I might say DHS is next with Project Renewal, who will be here as well. I think this actually may be their fourth move, which makes it even more unconscionable in terms of humanity. But I will leave that to DHS to talk about. And
Tammy.
so we're gonna, yes,
Just again, I know that you've said it before, but I want to reiterate it to everyone that we have a hard stop at 8 o'clock. So DHS and Project Renewal are going to give their presentation now, which hopefully will answer many of the questions that the public, the community is asking. So if they have answered your question, please do not ask it again in the interest of saving time. Also, DHS has said they might give us a meeting next week if we do not get to all the answers.
Thank
That's
you. Am I good to go? Jocelyn Carter from DHS Administrator.
I was going to introduce you, but
Okay,
Jocelyn, welcome. This is Jocelyn Carter. I believe it's Administrator for DHS. And you have your team, Iris Rodriguez, with you and Erica Dean. So the three of you are here. I am not sure who is here yet from Project Renewal, but I will look through my notes. But take it away, Jocelyn, and thank you so much for working with us to provide our first community engagement on this topic.
And I am pleased to be here. I know it's a difficult time, but just before I start, Eric and Jody are both on. See, Eric Roosevelt, yeah, Project Renewal is on the call, in the meeting. But thank you for having us, and thank you for having me and the opportunity to speak to all of you. I'd like to start any presentation a little bit about who we are and what we do. I'm the administrator of an agency that is responsible for over 54,000 individuals. So it's not 66. Last night we had 54,000 people, almost 18,000 single adults, men and women. And so part of the work that we need to do is to support them when they come to us. You see, I like to say that DHS is the safety net of the safety net. When all else fails, we're there 24 hours a day, stabilizing lives and moving folks to permanency. When the pandemic hit back in March, the single adult men and women are primarily in congregate settings. And we thought about how do we save lives and how do we make sure that the infection rate in our system did not escalate. And first we started by really looking at the vulnerable senior population. And then we looked at why not move the folks in congregate settings to hotels, right? And so we very quickly moved about 10,000 individuals into hotels. And so that was done very quickly. Yes, it was done because we wanted to save lives, and we did save lives. Now we're looking at distribution of where the hotels are. And yes, in the Upper West Side, there were multiple hotels. Down in the Five Eyes district, there are 2 COVID hotels and no shelters. This is an opportunity for us, and I've heard it said that we would welcome shelters. We would welcome shelters down in this area. We're using this temporarily, and we are going to turn this into a adult family site. So there will be in this community board an adult family site. Adult families are those moms with adult child, adult siblings, a couple who are falling in hard times and come to us. And so our plan is to be able to turn that in. And so this gives us that opportunity. It does mean that you will have men moving into the neighborhood who are people's husbands, people's brothers, uncles, people who are human. And so our job is to really help to stabilize them. I understand that you were not given any notice. This was part of the review that happened by the mayor, and this is the decision that was made. So what we're hoping to do tonight is to really look at how do we work together so that when we come into the neighborhood and we work with providers, Project Renewal is one of our best providers. They've been providing services. They can provide excellent services. They'll talk to you about what they do. But working in conjunction with the provider, Project Renewal, and all of you to make the work that needs to happen with the individuals be seamless and solve issues. Our president, you talked about what was happening in the Upper West Side and raising that money. I do know that we have individuals on the Upper West Side that can certainly utilize that money, and we hope to be able to duplicate that down here in the Five Eyes district. That money should not go to waste. And so we are certainly working to make connections, to be able to do the same type of thing that happens up there. For learning from what happens up there, what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen? So the other thing I wanted to really talk about is there are 2 tracks, I believe. There are those unsheltered on the street who need stabilization, and those who are unsheltered and coming into shelter. So there are 2 things that we need to do. Yes, unsheltered folks, and we've brought in at least 18 people into our safe havens since January this year. and we continue to engage. So those who are sheltered on the street, we're engaging. Those who are sheltered in brick and mortar, we're working to stabilize and move to permanency. This site will give us an opportunity to stabilize and move to permanency while still moving towards an adult family facility. So there are two things happening here. Other questions that you may have, trying to make sure I address all the issues. I think I'm going to stop there and then I'll answer questions that you may have. But I'll have Project Renewal start talking about the services that they provide and have been providing.
Yeah, instead of answering questions at the moment, could you have Project Renewal do a presentation?
Sure. All right, Jody.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Rosenbaum. I'm the president and CEO of Project Renewal. And I'm joined by Jody Rudin, who is our executive vice president and chief operating officer. Briefly, Project Renewal is one of the oldest and largest homeless service agencies in New York City. We house over 2,000 people every night, half of them in 7 shelters. We operate through Manhattan, Bronx, and Brooklyn, and the other half in permanent supported housing buildings that we operate, mostly in Manhattan and the Bronx. We're also one of the largest providers of healthcare to homeless New Yorkers, treating over 13,000 individual people each year with primary care, psychiatric care, substance use treatment, and even dentistry. We operate employment programs targeted at homeless New Yorkers or people at risk, including a culinary arts training program that's been in existence since 1995, and out of which has grown a social purpose venture called City Beat Kitchens, which today makes and delivers over 3 million meals a year to homeless New Yorkers, making us one of the largest providers of food for homeless New Yorkers as well. You'd asked me in March what my greatest fears were walking into the pandemic. It was that we would be overrun by the virus in our congregate shelters. Today, I'm actually amazed to say that we've had only 85 cases of COVID among the 3,000 people who have lived with us since March. And only one of them died in shelter. And that one was someone who was on hospice before they got infected with COVID. I think the hotels have actually had a lot to do with this. We have operated at this point now, this will be our 6th hotel. We are occupying 4 today. And we actually have operated a hotel within 10 minutes of Radisson since June 15th, reducing density at 2 of our other shelters. And I think we established a great relationship with the neighborhood in that hotel. And there have been very, very few problems. And I would certainly hope that we can repeat that experience here. We make it an absolute priority and a commitment to get to know the neighborhood in which we operate, even if it's only for a short period of time. We demonstrated that in the first hotel, and we will do so here, even though we understand that we are walking into a very difficult situation. I'm going to turn it over. I know you want more information about what exactly is the population we'll be serving and what services we'll be providing. So I'm going to turn this over to Jody to give you more information about that.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's good to be with you. I'm Jody Rudin. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer from Project Renewal. As Eric touched on, at Project Renewal, we work with nearly 15,000 clients a year to help them renew their lives through health, homes, and jobs. And that's what we did at the Lucerne, and that's what we plan to do at the Radisson. So I wanted first and foremost to give you a picture of the services that we're going to provide at the Radisson. Each of the clients at the Radisson will be assigned a case manager who will work with them comprehensively towards helping them secure permanent housing. That could mean any number of activities, including helping them to secure public benefits or entitlements for which they're eligible, helping them secure identification, helping them complete housing applications and visit apartments. And we also try to bring a multidisciplinary approach to our work. So in addition to case management, we have a wide range of healthcare services, including primary care, psychiatric services that will likely largely be provided via a telepsychiatry hub at the Radisson. And then we have a team that delivers healthcare for around addiction treatment and drug use. We also
Jody?
have, yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but due to the lack of time, is it possible to answer some of the specific questions that were brought up about 52 William? Can you just go straight to why it was selected, how how that site was selected?
That should be a Jocelyn question, but
Right, I'm jumping in on the 52 William question. Sorry, I talked about the review that happened, the mayor review that happened, and we really looked at distribution of hotels that we use for de-densification. Back in March, it was done really quickly, and then we started to look at the distribution of where hotels were. Some areas had more hotels and COVID hotels than other areas. Town, for instance, Upper West Side, for instance, and so we really wanted to distribute the hotels. This site gives us an opportunity to use temporarily for de-densification and gives us the opportunity to have a permanent shelter down in this community district. One of the things that we wanted to do in this administration is to make sure that we have equity in where we have shelters. And every community board we've been talking about since I've been in this seat, 2017, the commissioner has sent letters out to every community board saying, we need a building, we need spaces in your community board. This gives us an opportunity to have a regular shelter, permanent shelter for adult families down in community board.
well, wait, Jocelyn.
Yes, Tammy.
No, you're saying a permanent shelter. This is temporary. You've said this is temporary. So this does not answer Pat's question, and that's what we want: targeted information as to why a temporary shelter here at that location. I believe you have a different process for permanence. So the meshing the two is not a fair thing for the community because there's two total different processes, and that needs to be identified. And that's part of the confusion and the lack of facts and engagement to the community. Again, why was this location chosen as the temporary location? So far, there was no answer to Gail Brewer's question. The money will not follow down here. The money is an Upper West Side money pot. You're not getting the same thing. The only thing you're getting thus far from the community in Lower Manhattan that I have seen is a lawsuit similar to the one that you're getting on the Upper West Side. So before those people speak, what we need to understand is how this from a quarantine hotel was turned into a separate facility. What under the emergency order allows that, and how this spot was chosen versus other locations.
And what does temporary mean?
It with the permanent.
So
what does temporary mean?
What does temporary mean? Throughout the pandemic, we have moved the 10,000 folks into identified congregate settings. We will be returning back to shelters once we're able to do that. So that's the temporary piece. How long will that be? I can't tell you that yet because we have to look at and follow the CDC Department of Health guidelines for that to happen.
So it's based on the COVID. It's
for us to return back to our settings, right? So we wanted to make sure that we didn't have escalation of infection rates within our system. And so we wanted to make sure folks were safe. So that's the decision that was made to make sure that folks were safe. That happened quickly.
Was that decision made for this group in their second or third move to the Lucerne? Correct?
The decision
that de-densification put them at the Lucerne, right?
Yes. But the distribution of hotels and where people are, we have to look at that, right? Multiple people, multiple hotels down here. Hold on, there's my dog. 1 minute. My dog wanted to jump in, sorry. So we look at distribution where hotels are and the space. So we did it very quickly back in March and April when we started to move. Now we're looking at distribution. The district down here have no permanent shelters and only 2 COVID hotels. And so we had this underutilized quarantine hotel that we had been using, and that gives us the space to move them in and gives us the opportunity to continue to move the process towards a permanent shelter.
Okay, so I think another question is, we were told that there are 235 men that are going to be moved into this site.
Mhm.
Are they all, what is the population at the Lucerne? So are you just, are there 235 men at Lucerne, or is there another facility that's being blended with the Lucerne population?
It's 240 men from the Lucerne. There's no blending of the men that are there, the men that are going to be moved.
That's it's 235 now, just so you know.
235, right?
235.
Okay. I mean, I'll be blunt. There's some questions that are being asked about, are any of the men in this population sex offenders?
I could tell you they're not.
Okay. I mean, we sent out a list of questions. I don't know if you have them in front of you to answer those specifically.
I saw the email. I have to pull that up. Yeah, so
well, Tammy, what were some of the, I'm trying to find the questions. What were some of the other questions?
But they're small. Okay.
We can, why don't we do this?
Why don't you
because it's really important that the community, we had shared with you list of over 300 questions. There's a lot of symmetry in many of the questions. A lot of them are stapled together. I think what we can do is call on some of the panelists and have that dialogue started, because they will repeat some of the questions, and we'll try, we have people going through them to try and ensure that we do this with a little bit of grace. So from Downtown New York City for Safe Streets is Christopher. You should.
Hi,
Christopher
hello,
Brown.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hi, hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Brown. I'm a resident of 2 Water Street in the Financial District, and I'm also one of the founding members of Downtown New Yorkers for Safe Streets. I've been a resident of the neighborhood for 6 years, and I deeply care about it. I'd first like to thank everybody for allowing us to be recognized on the call, and to all of our fellow neighbors who deeply care and love our neighborhood and who are on this call. I think it's over 1,000 people now with YouTube. It's great. Downtown New Yorkers has been created to amplify the voices of our community who are concerned for the following: 1, the safety of our children; 2, the cleanliness of our streets; and 3, the integrity of our neighborhood. We were founded in just 5 days, and we have a group page on Facebook that has amassed 2,300 members of our fellow neighbors. These neighbors are from all walks of life. There's their moms, their families, their business people, business owners. They voiced all of their concerns about the lack of transparency and notice for this impending transfer of over 240 men, or 235. I don't know how many there is now. But before I talk about this, I just want to tell you about a personal note. I live at 2 Water Street. 4 Water Street is a Hilton Garden Inn. It is filled with homeless people. I have compassion for homeless people. I've been living with them in my neighborhood in front of my building now since early June. Now, one of the points that was brought up was, there's not a density of hotels or shelters within this area. I find that highly unlikely. There are a lot of hotels in this neighborhood filled with homeless people, and I think a lot of my other neighbors can attest to that. So when this brings me to my topic about 52 William Street and the current COVID-19 quarantine hotel that's set up there that's going to be turned into a shelter run by Project Renewal and DSS. Number 1 is our children. Within 1 mile, there's 11 schools. Within a half a mile, there's 6 schools. Within 300 feet, there's 3 schools: Bright Horizon Early Learning, Pine Street School, and Quad Prep. Diagonally across the street, there's an open area called Fosun Plaza. This plaza is used daily as a place for kids to go to recess. They had a fire drill at the school the other day. The kids use that plaza. We have families that, let their kids play there on a daily basis. This is right in front of this proposed location. Number 2 is the
Chris,
location.
you're gonna have to go faster.
Okay, number 2 is the location. It's a historic area. We're a very dense neighborhood with narrow streets. We now have businesses with built out areas for dining and such. And with COVID-19 and a pandemic that, we've all been suffering from, we're all used to social distancing, mask wearing. I don't know how it's feasible for these people in this shelter. Where are they going to go in the area to congregate and hang out? There is no place to go for them, and it just is not safe. We firmly believe this location is not a good location for our neighborhood. So with the health and safety of the neighborhood and the 240 men caught in the middle of this failed experiment the de Blasio administration is forcing upon us, we urge you to find compassion for this solution that is beneficial for the men in question and to our neighborhood. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Thank you, Christopher. I will say if that music you hear is the timer that I have that runs on my phone. Yes, it is a little kinder than a bullhorn, but I will be brutal at 3 minutes and ask to silence you because someone on the call is going to make me a co-host, so I have the button. Just saying. All right.
So Jocelyn, there was a question though that has not been answered yet.
I was asking to respond back to Christopher's question. I think that, out of I know you said multiple things, as you were talking about folks who are experiencing homelessness. I think, when I think about my job, I think of people as humans that are experiencing homelessness and not, homeless people. But this, in terms of looking at, and I think the question that Christopher, I'm going to look at is, where are they going to go? And so we are, and I understand that was a big issue. And I talked to Project Renewal just today, trying to work with my team and Project Renewal to make community so we could find a place for them to go. I think it's important to think of people as human, to think of people as, it's not every person who is experiencing homelessness is a criminal, right? And so I also think that, to reframe that about who the folks are is important for us to do that also. So the integrity of the neighborhood, the safety of the children, I hear the schools are there, these are humans. And so with Project Renewals, I work with them, with DHS work, we have to really think about how
what does that mean?
We still didn't really get an answer though. Where are they going to go to socialize and do have recreation?
So, I know, Patricia, I don't have a straight answer for you. I don't want to lie to you. We're working on working that out.
How many people are in the meeting?
I don't have an answer for that tonight.
Can you see how many people are in the meeting?
We're going to work.
I'm sorry, someone needs to mute themselves. We can hear you.
Can you so this is certainly something that we are aware of and we're working on. And so I don't have that answer tonight. I can't tell you that it's going here or there right now. We're going to work that out.
Well, do you think you're going to have that answer before the move happens?
I would hope. I can't tell you definitively yes. It is on top of our mind. And so we're looking at, I know at the Radisson site, there is space within. There's not space within for smoking. I know that's true. And so we are looking at how do we find places to do that.
I'm sorry, Johnson. Hold on. Someone is asking how many people are in the meeting and asking about a password. Would you please mute yourself?
Elizabeth.
What's my computer password? Dante 98?
No.
It's Elizabeth Lamere, just because it pops up.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask all the community board members to keep themselves on mute. We have a list that we're going to get through. I see hands that are up. So, April, can you? We need to mute Liz Lamere.
Okay. And I just want to go back to Jocelyn.
If she can't be muted, then if you can't be muted for whatever reason, then we will boot you off and let you sign back in, because we got to make the most of our time.
Jocelyn, it's important, obviously. This question is going to be asked several times. So I think you have to come back to us with an answer to that question before the move happens. Where are they going to go to congregate, to smoke? Where are they going to go to socialize outside of the facility? I understand there's going to be, programs inside of the facility, but let's be realistic. People need fresh air and going to want to be outside.
So absolutely, Patricia. I could tell you, and I know this is not satisfactory to all of you. Folks experiencing homelessness have a right to public spaces too. But we will work with you all and with Project Renewal and my team to see if we can find a place whether it is directly there. I know I work down on Beaver Street, someplace close or not. And so we're going to try to figure out how do we do that. Patricia, I can't say to you that this is going to happen tomorrow. I'm going to be really, one of the things when I go to community meetings, I have to tell you the truth, right?
And that's good.
This is a tough time. This is a rough time for all of us. It is not easy. But my job as the administrator is to really think about the people we serve. I mean, I've been here for 16 years, 3 years in this seat, and it's a hard place to be. It's a hard place to sit and talk to all of you, with something that's hard to hear. But I stay and I continue to do this work because I believe in the men and women that I serve. And so it is really important for all of you to know that we're going to work hard to, really look at what we can do. I don't want to tell you that I'm going to have it before we move. I don't want to, lead you on that way, but I want to be truthful.
But Jocelyn, from what the community wants you to have these answers before you move these people. You are already destabilizing a community that is starting to thrive and prosper where they are. Taking them and putting them in a completely new location, destabilizing them entirely without having all these answers is not actually humane for them either. I know you care. I know that Project Renewal does a good job, but it's like going on vacation and trying to pack your bag afterwards. I mean, it's really just that doesn't make sense in terms of a planning perspective at all. And with that comment, and I apologize for my editorial because I couldn't hold myself back, we do have two large organizations downtown. So just for the community board members who are raising hands, I see you, I know you, you're on the list, right? But we have two large organizations downtown that are represented on the call tonight, and we're trying to go back and forth between them so we can hear a multitude of perspectives. Jessica Lappin from the Downtown Alliance is one of our amazing partners in downtown. They are our local bid. They do an incredible job of helping DSNY because they help keep our streets clean, help the tourists find where they're going, and provide an incredible resource for even just their small district, which is included in what Jocelyn's talking about. Jessica, welcome and thank you.
Thanks. I know passions are running high, and I just want to say, Jocelyn, I think the whole crux of this is that we appreciate that these are real people that we're talking about and human beings. And we at the Alliance have been advocating for the homeless for many years. And with our work with BRC, I mean, we know that on a first name basis, most of the street homeless, we placed 62 within our area last year, just 20 in the last month. And so I think we recognize when we're dealing with people who are struggling with substance abuse and mental health issues, like they're but for the grace of God. And so we respect you, Eric, Jody, everybody at DHS. We know that you are in this for the right reasons. It's not about you. In this instance, it's about, and you call it straight, Jocelyn, I'm going to call it straight. This is about the mayor overruling and disregarding the advice and the guidance and the elected officials on the Upper West Side and making a political decision that almost everybody disagrees with. And it's not in the best interests of these clients. And what we're seeing and what we're discussing is a little bit of a recipe for chaos and disaster. The idea that this would happen next week, if it's been pushed back, we don't know till when. Until we have a plan in place, it's going to be a repeat of what happened on the Upper West Side. And it's really nice to hear about a family shelter as a permanent possibility. That's new information. And I say that because we have no information. And is it temporary? Is it permanent? What's happening? And so what I want to talk about is this temporary, and I say that because temporary can mean a lot of things for a very long time. Like, what are the services? And Jody, you started to talk about this, but if we want to now what we're hearing is, again, these men are going to move again, right? This is temporary, so this is just move 4 until there's 5 or 6. If the issue is having them on the street, like what are the services you're going to provide? Because the borough president is discussing sort of a criminal walking away from real services on the Upper West Side. So I guess my question is, why is this better for them? And I'm not talking about the long-term shelter and densification. I'm talking about, why is this move better for these 235 men? In what way, in this facility, in what sense of services? Or is it just, let's call it what it is, a political move that isn't really in their best interest, but something you have to carry out?
Jessica, I'll answer first, and then Jody will talk about the services. And so I did, and I know it's not satisfactory to hear. The review did happen, and because of the density in certain parts of the city, the decision was to use this space that was being underutilized, giving us the opportunity to turn it into an adult family shelter. I know it's not satisfactory to you, Jessica, or to the other folks on this call, but that's how we landed.
But that's not what we're discussing tonight. That's a different discussion that we welcome. We're not discussing a family shelter. That's not what we're discussing. We are discussing your move of a Lucerne residence. That's what
I'm saying. Yes, what I'm saying to you is that the men at the Lucerne will be moved to this site. It will be underutilized. And our long-term plan is to turn it into a shelter, right? Long-term family shelter. So when we look at distribution of where de-densified hotels are, some places had more than other places, right? The reality is where they were and other places in Midtown had more than other places. After the review happened, the decision was made to move the men to a less density space. So that's where we landed, and that's where we are now. At the Lucerne, in that area when they were there, they were being provided multitude of services that will continue to be provided down in the Radisson. And Jody and the project renewal team will continue to do that. She can give you more specifics now about what those services are.
But before she goes, the Lucerne was the same as what you're saying. They were moved. This is the same answer that was given to the people on the Upper West Side. They were moved to that location because it was a de-densified location. So in and of itself, that location provided the de-density that was needed. So why move them again versus looking to get the homeless families and people we have on the streets of Community Board 1? Why not utilize Project Renewal and their fabulous resources to set up a way to help the people who are on the street in CB1, get them off the street, help them get to services in the neighborhood? So they're already here. They're in front of Chris Brown's house. They're in front of my house. They're in front of everybody's house. Help them get into this kind of a system instead of moving people who were already de-densified, not once, but twice. That's the question. This is not, we hear you clearly, this is not de-densifying. This is not de-densifying. That's what the overall is, but they are already been de-densified. So even if you said, you know what, we're de-densifying the Lucerne, it's 240, 230, and we're bringing 80 people down, that is de-densifying the Lucerne. But we're not de-densifying the Lucerne. You've already done that once. And that's what you told Community Board 7.
So could I answer a couple of things? In terms of distribution of the numbers, some areas I talked about had more de-densified hotels, right? We're not de-densifying the individual building. Our work is to de-densify the distribution of hotels. But I just wanted to pick on two things that you talked about. I think it's important to know there are two tracks. The unsheltered on the street that you talked about with in front of your house, in front of Christopher's house. Those unsheltered on the street is a different population. It's not families. They're really entrenched on the street. Our providers, BRC is one of them, the Manhattan Consortium is one of them, Breaking Ground. They're out every single day, 24 hours a day, engaging those on the street. It takes about 6 months to build trust before people are even interested in coming in. We have been able to move 18 of those people in off the street into permanency and into stabilization beds. It's a different, and into safe havens. So we fully expect that there are two tracks happening: shelters and then safe havens, which are a little bit lower shelters with less regulations and rules. And so we're doing both. We're looking at shelters for those who are unsheltered, to bring them in off the street, and then single adults and families who can go into regular shelters. So we do have a track. So those unsheltered on the street, we're also paying attention to that. So we have an unsheltered population and we have sheltered populations. Jody is.
Jody, you can unmute yourself to talk about your fact sheet
Yeah, I wanted
address
to jump
Pat's
in.
other questions.
Hi, yes, really briefly, we provide a full range of services at the Lucerne that we would plan to replicate at the Radisson, ranging from case management, healthcare, entitlements and benefits support, and vocational services. We'll also provide therapeutic groups, AA meetings, and a variety of recreational activities. And because I see it as a question in the chat, I'll also mention that we're going to contract with a security company to have 25 guards per shift, at least 2 of whom would have responsibility for being posted external to the building, doing block patrols, and engaging our clients who they see out in the neighborhood. And we'd want to have thoughtful planning conversations with the community about what that external surveillance looks like. We will have a total of 50 full-time staff spread across 3 shifts. And the other question that seems to come up regularly that I wanted to speak to is that there is no requirement that clients leave the building during the day. They're free to stay in their rooms or in common areas throughout the hotel, and we hope to engage them to stay through our robust constellation of services.
I just want to clarify that the 50 full-time staff are in addition to the security staff. It's not, so it's 25 security staff per shift plus full-time, the 50 full-time professionals focused on the case management and other services.
Can we, Tammy, move on to the other groups that had a representative that wanted to speak?
I don't know if Vanessa is here from PACE. Vanessa, are you on?
Here.
Okay, Vanessa Herman from PACE is one of many universities in Lower Manhattan, but the voice of the university population, I think today is going to be spoken by Vanessa Best.
Thank you, Tammy, and to the entire community board for asking me to speak today, and to all of our elected officials. Thank you. Rosalind, Jody, I'm not sure how much you know about PACE. I've been in PACE now for 7.5 years. We have more than 10,000 employees and students that call our New York City campus home. We have several residence halls that line the William Street corridor. And our students, in a study that City Hall released last year in 2019, did the second most volunteer hours in our community in Manhattan. So we are very engaged with our local community and giving back, and in particular, homeless individuals. That is something that is very important to our students to try to help them. We are very concerned about this proposed shelter. We have 1,200 students who are living in our residence halls right now. Over the last 2 years, we have seen a drastic uptick in harassment, assaults, students being followed into our residence halls by individuals who have been identified as being homeless. We work continually with Jessica and the Downtown Association and the NYPD to try to mitigate all these instances. But what we've seen really in the last 2 years is our students, for the first time since I have been at PACE, have told us that they're not feeling as safe as they usually are around our community. Since Friday, since this has been announced, we have received so many emails, phone calls, social media inquiries about this, how this decision was made. What is PACE doing? Is my student safe coming to your university? So these are all things that we're trying to talk about and trying to get answers to. For lack of, I guess the question I have, and there were many that were asked tonight that we are very interested in, is you mentioned more than once about a review and these decisions that were made. I'd like to know, can we see these reviews? Is there a process? I guess there is no input by the public when these reviews take place, but I've also heard conflicting reports that there are several locations in Lower Manhattan, in the financial district, where there are individuals being housed who are currently homeless. And I don't think I've heard a real answer as to how many people that really is. Our streets, as you know, are very small. They get crowded. And we're just now seeing an uptick and people are really coming back. And we just would really like to work together to find a solution for this. But I would really like to know, again, these reports, can we see them?
Thank you, Vanessa. It's Jocelyn. I just want to correct, my name is Jocelyn. The review was done through a law department and a commissioner. And so that that's where that stands. I don't know. I mean, it's, that's where it was done. So I can't tell you go here, but that's where it was done. I don't want to say a couple of things about safety. You said in the last 2 years, your students have been harassed by those who are, homeless. One of the things that I would say is that there are bad people in every place. Right? Not every person who is experiencing homelessness is a criminal, right? And so the idea that the men will continue or increase the harassment, I beg to differ, and that's going to be all that they're going to do. The work that we have to do together is to be able to help, stabilize their lives. What I have seen in every neighborhood that I've gone into where we put shelters is that, there's always this, fear that happens because people don't know who they are. People who are experiencing homelessness always get this rap about they're dangerous and what they're going to do, but they're humans and that's not necessarily so. I think the framing of who the folks are is important, to think about them as humans and not really, somebody who's out to get you.
So Jocelyn, that was not what I indicated. It's with our students are concerned, our parents are concerned, our alumni are concerned, and we really want to work together towards finding a solution because as we stated in the letter we sent to the mayor, we care about the well-being of all New Yorkers. I don't think there's anyone that would question the commitment of our employees and our students to better the neighborhoods and communities where we live and work. It's just, we have gotten a lot of questions about this and I'm not hearing a lot of answers.
I hear you. I mean, I stand by what I said. We'll work together. We'll work together with you. We certainly, I know I speak for Project Renewal. I hope I'm not talking out of turn. We'll make connections with you all, also. My team will also, to figure out how can we work best together.
I think
maybe we should hear about the security plans.
Right. That was kind of one of the questions that Vanessa alluded to, Downtown Alliance has alluded to. There's a lot of questions in the chat about security plan and whether or not there's a curfew. You said that people aren't thrown out on the streets, but is there a curfew that they have to be in at that involves the security, things like that? Would be good if you can address that now. And after that, we're going to hear from Open Hearts, Friends of FIDI, and go to community board members, Rosa Chang, then Justine and Andrew.
Jody, you want to talk about, there is a curfew at the site, and Jody, in terms of the numbers of security that's there?
Sure. As I mentioned, we plan to contract with a security firm, the same one that we use at the Lucerne, so they already know our clients. We expect to have 25 security guards on shift, a few of whom will be patrolling external to the building. Our director of security, Charlie Mulham, has a strong relationship with the 1st Police Precinct. As Eric mentioned, we already work with you guys at 6 Water Street. We're the operator of that hotel. So we've been able to fortify our relationships with the precinct over the last few months. And Charlie is actually meeting the NCO Solomon tomorrow at the Radisson location to start planning and putting measures in place. We also have a good neighbor policy. We expect our clients to act in accordance with principles that we put out in the Good Neighbor Policy. They sign it. The Good Neighbor Policy has multiple components. And for people who are either not a good fit clinically for our program or who have concerning behavior in the community, we're able to transfer them to other sites. We have appreciated that DHS allowed us to stop backfilling our beds at the Lucerne. So our census dropped from what was 283 to now 235. So it's a more stable population. It's clients who we know. And I would be remiss to say that, one of the bright spots for me personally in kind of being caught in this crossfire as a provider is having had the opportunity to get to know many of the men who we serve, and they are brave and courageous and struggling and trying to get back on their feet. And many of them are making extraordinary progress. And I just want to give that context. But certainly if there are issues, if there are people behaving poorly in the community, we want to know. We will plan to be in touch with all of whomever wants to on as regular and routine a basis as you want. We strive to be responsive, transparent partners. And if there are issues, we'll mitigate against them. And we will be tightly coordinated with the local precinct, and we'll have significant security operation in effect.
Would you mind if I just interject 1 second, just because you mentioned the hotel that's next to me at
Chris,
6 Water you
yes.
operate?
Chris, no.
Okay.
I hear you, but no. I'm dismayed a little bit at the reply only because you want to hear about it. Quite frankly, you should know about it. We don't want to be the ones to tell you. I don't know how to say that clearly enough. I know, Jody, that you do good work, but it would be better if it ran like the operation on Water Street did, where we don't get a lot of complaints, where you are on top and the security is done, that we do not have the problems that the Upper West Side has had, that I don't want to have to call you with problems, or anybody, for Eric or Project Renewal. You should take care of them before they head out onto the streets. And that's part of one of the dialogues. I appreciate your openness to hearing what our feedback is, but we really don't want to be the extra security on the streets. That's what Jocelyn is saying that you and your team are supposed to be. And we don't have enough of that as it is, because of the situation with the amount of homeless that we have right now, which grows. And I've spoken to Jocelyn about this every night when the subways stop. We are a end of the line location in Lower Manhattan. You have dozens more people up on the street. So while getting 18 people off the street is amazing, we're seeing hundreds of people on the street down here, and it grows weekly. And we're not at, evictions restarting yet. So understand that's where that's coming back. I'm gonna go to Open Hearts, and they have 2 minutes. I believe we have from Open Hearts.
I am Corinne Lowe.
Corinne Lowe.
Hi.
Corinne,
So Caitlin from Friends of FIDE said I could have a little bit of her time because I want to also read a statement from a resident of the Lucerne shelter, because I think it's extremely important for impacted individuals to be represented in this conversation. And I'm very disappointed that there aren't any on this call today. So what I want to say, I'm a community member on the Upper West Side. I'm not a professional in this space in any way. I'm a college professor and a mom. And I got involved in this because there was a lot of, vocal discontent with the shelters in our area. And for me, I thought that was morally wrong and unjustified by the facts on the ground, because for us, having the shelters here has been an opportunity for service and for forming deep and meaningful community bonds. And so I want to do a couple things tonight. The first thing I want to do is tell you that these transfers are wrong. This is unjust. This is not the correct decision. And I think we heard from DHS that there really is no justification for this happening. If this space is available, there are things that it could be used well for, such as further de-densifying Wards Island, where there are still 5,000 to 6,000 people in congregate shelters while we're having a COVID resurgence. There is no need to move a shelter that is operating well, that has just reached stability, because it takes time to reach stability in a new location, that has just reached stability and strong shelter relationships, and traumatize the people there who are in substance use recovery, where stability is paramount to their actual successful recovery, and traumatize them through this destabilizing move. So this transfer is wrong. But at the same time, I am dismayed by a lot of the comments I'm seeing in the chat and hearing that has a tone that says that, these types of people shouldn't be here. There are children in every neighborhood of this city. Your children are not any different than those that live in different neighborhoods of the city. Everybody has to share responsibility for solving the crisis of homelessness in New York City. Would it be better if Mayor de Blasio had committed to permanent housing at the beginning of his term? Absolutely. But that's not what's happened. And so we have homeless individuals, we have single adult homeless individuals, and some of those single adult homeless individuals are in substance use recovery or current substance users. They are still human beings. They still deserve a safe place to live. And if you say not in my backyard, all that means is that it goes to someone else's backyard. And that's exactly what we're seeing now, because a small group of wealthy residents on the Upper West Side hired a lawyer to say not in my backyard. And so now they're trying to move it to your backyard. But why should it be moved from place to place? You know, these are human beings and we can open our hearts to welcome them. And so that's what we try to do with the Upper West Side Open Hearts Initiative. And I want to tell you that I hope that you build a single adult shelter. I think it would be wonderful if it was a de-densification of Wards Island. It could be an employment shelter. And I want to talk to you about the ways to support that shelter. So what we've done on the Upper West Side is that we have created spiritual walk and talks with local faith leaders who meet residents from the shelter and take them for socially distanced spiritual meetings out in the park. We've created weekly community-run AA meetings that take place in the shelter. We've created free stores so that we can triage donations from the community and sort them and make sure residents are able to pick out exactly what they want without further burdening sort of the shelter system with needing to sort those donations. We've created resume writing workshops. We've created free exercise classes in the park and meditation classes. And through this all, we have been enriched ourselves through these deep bonds of community and friendship and opportunities for service that we are forming. Our children have been enriched by the opportunity to serve those in need. And when we see people in need and we are fortunate enough to live in high-rise buildings, we should not be saying, get this out of my backyard. We should be saying, how can I help? What can I do? If you don't like seeing poverty in your neighborhood, you always have the option to use your resources to solve it. Now, what I'd like to do is read a statement from someone who goes by the Homeless Hero. He is a resident of the Lucerne. He's one of the men that will be transferred. And I'm happy and proud to now be able to call him my dear friend. And he asked to speak on this meeting tonight, and his request was denied. And I want you to hear his voice. This is what he said when he first learned the news.
Corinne?
Yes.
Before you go down that road, all I needed was an email to get him on, and I couldn't get one.
Right.
So he was not denied.
Mm-hmm.
We are delighted to have him participate in his statement. Okay.
So that, okay. And then he can join. I can tell him and he can join. So I called my friend, the Homeless Hero, and I told him that, they were being moved. And this is what he texted me back. What I think bothers me so much is the relationships we built this far. This more than anything. We residents never experienced such warmth and respect, meaning from us, the Upper West Side Open Hearts Initiative. This is not the norm for any of us. Many of us have fractured relationships with family and friends. This is one of the reasons why we're experiencing homelessness. To have a community come out with open hearts was transformative in so many ways. It touched us in ways that 1,000 AA meetings could never touch. Our hardened hearts became soft again and began to beat at a normal and healthy pace. Through the actions of Open Hearts Initiative, we were able to know what it's like to be human again. Moving around is normal to us, but being cut off from a lifeline of love is like a death sentence. The mayor has sentenced us to a spiritual and moral, if not physical, death. And I don't know how anybody can listen to those words and have dry eyes. This is the trauma that is being inflicted on these men by moving them senselessly without a single justification, just to appease some individuals who hired a lawyer who happens to know the mayor. And I think that is absolutely outrageous. I'm also happy to answer any questions about the experience of having the shelter in our backyard, because it has been completely misrepresented in the media. There's a lot of confusion between street homelessness and shelter homelessness. And I will say that it has been an incredibly meaningful and wonderful experience to be able to welcome the shelter with open hearts. And I would be glad to work with the community board down there to put the same services in place for a different population. Thank you.
Well, I think,
and that's good to
Corinne,
hear.
That's great to hear, because we would like to get those same kind of services for the people who are on the streets in Lower Manhattan. I'm sure we could probably fill an entire shelter alone with just the people sleeping under the FDR. Okay, thank you very much for speaking. Thank you for reading his statement.
Tammy?
Mariama, is that you?
No, it's Jocelyn.
Jody, is that you?
No, it's
No,
Jocelyn.
Jocelyn, of course, please.
Jocelyn. Hi. Thank you, Corinne. You know, the statement is very moving, and I know that you certainly care. And what you are doing in the Upper West Side, I really do hope that we can replicate down here. One of the things that we did when we identified our system of a little over 10,000 men was also the identified water. And so throughout our system where they were congregate, most of the single men, women in congregate, we did identify them. So we don't have 5,000 to 6,000 men on water.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up, Jocelyn.
Yeah. Can you hear me any better? Getting close.
Try.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that the information about 5,000 to 6,000 men on Ward Zion is not true. We did identify our entire system. That's why we have we moved almost 10,000 men and women into the hotels because we wanted to save lives and not have the pandemic wreak havoc through our system.
Tammy, thank you, Jocelyn. Tammy, who's next, who wanted to speak?
I think Corinne covered Friends of FIDI, unless there's something I don't know on that. I think she took time from that. We're going to ask Patrick Cannell from the FIDI Neighbors Association to speak.
Thanks, Tammy, and thank you to everyone for hosting this and being here tonight. I'm Patrick Cannell. I'm president of the Financial District Neighborhood Association, in addition to being a member of Community Board 1. I've lived in the Financial District for over 15 years. I also work in the Financial District. I live at William and John Street, very close to this site. I also work on William and Exchange, very close to this site. So I know you've heard from a few of our other neighbors tonight, and we'll hear probably from some more. I think part of the frustration is that we need facts. I was surprised by the initial presentation, Jocelyn, and the lack of very specific facts. So that's not meant to be a criticism as much as it is to encourage that there be more meetings. I think we need to have more meetings so that we're able to get enough answers to the very legitimate questions that my neighbors and friends have raised. I want to echo Tammy's earlier comments. Jocelyn, we know, and Corinne as well, we appreciate and know your passion. And I want to assure you that my neighbors in the Financial District are a compassionate group of people. We really, really are. But we also have legitimate questions about something like this coming into our neighborhood, as would any neighborhood, particularly, as I think has been pointed out, where there's been zero notification, which Jocelyn, thank you for acknowledging that at the top of your presentation. There was no community notification whatsoever. So I hope you'll commit to future meetings and doing so as soon as possible. Vanessa asked earlier about the analysis that you referred to it as the mayoral analysis that was done. For the Financial District Neighborhood Association, we echo Pace's call to have any written memoranda of that produced. I don't think it's fair that such a memorandum be shielded just because it was prepared in part by the law department. I think the public needs to see that. The public has every right to see that. Thank you as well for talking about the security plans. But one of my concerns, and it relates directly to the services that will be provided to whoever ultimately inhabits the shelter, is what financial resources has the city committed to this specific site currently, and what will be committed in the future. We all know that the city is in a budget crisis, and we want to make sure that folks aren't moved here and then just totally abandoned. So can you speak, Jocelyn, at least to the financial commitment that the city is making?
So all of the, during the pandemic, this is considered an emergency. And so we're using emergency funds at this time. But in terms of our shelter system, there is a negotiation that happens to cover costs, rents, social services. In this case, the rent, the negotiation for the hotel, there's a contract that happens between the hotel association and the provider, and the bill right now is 3 emergency services because of the pandemic. I don't
Can
know
you
if
talk about the separation between the temporary nature of what's being proposed right now and what sounds to be the future imagined iteration of a permanent shelter? That permanent side of things, is that something that will go through? Because I imagine it would have to be pursuant to a lease. So either that's going to have to go through a ULURP review or a Section 195 review and notification. Is that the plan? Is that what's going to happen in the future?
And yeah, so Patrick, thanks for that question. Typically, this is different. So we typically, providers or developers bring us a building, and so we've had this building being used for quarantine. So we're soliciting proposals now to make it an adult family shelter. Once we get a proposal through the procurement process, is rate charged and rated. Once that is finalized and the person, whoever gets the whoever turns in a proposal and is awarded, then we start the work in getting a contract. The landlord and the provider, there's a lease that happens between the landlord and the provider. Our contract is with the provider. And so then we work in a contract with the provider, paying the funds through to the provider, and they pay the rent to the landlord. But that's a whole procurement process. I can't, because we don't have a proposal now. We have said that we want to turn this into adult family. Right now we're seeking proposals for that to happen. It is very transparent. There will be a meeting. I'll be coming back in front of all of you to answer questions about what that is. But an adult family shelter, it is managed through OTDA, regulatory 491, part 491 in the state regulates us. And so we have to meet certain criteria to be able to open one of these shelters. Just one last thing, Patrick, could I just say this? The agency, when I started here, the agency, a long time ago, shelters just sprang up in the middle of the night. We made in 2017 a commitment to be very transparent when we bring shelters to the community. I remember coming in the middle of the night and opening shelters. We don't do that. So you would know once a proposal is charged and rated, we will be talking with Community Board 1. The public get an opportunity to ask us questions. We will be able to answer questions that you may have. So right now the plan is to move it to an adult family setting, and we can use it for an adult family setting because it will be able to meet the criteria, the building to be set up.
Madam Chair, may I have just one more moment? You did actually anticipate my next line of questioning, which was about the 2017 turning the tide on
the tide plan. Yes.
City's commitments to that. Thank you. First of all, will you commit to additional meetings?
Yes, certainly. My IGA person, Erin, is on the phone, on the call. Hi, Erin. And so I think this is not the last of our meetings. I think it is important, and I am certainly willing to come and talk with you all again. I am willing to answer as many questions that you have. I do have a stop tonight, but I certainly am willing to come back. I want, for me, right, it's important that we make relationships. I think relationships, of course, as a social worker is where it is, right? So you could say to me, Pat, you could tell me, Jocelyn, whatever you want to say, and I can hear that and figure out how do we help. There's some things that at this point, I can't help you. I can't tell you it's not happening tomorrow. I can't say that. But I want to think about how can we do it together. That's my commitment. Tammy, you have my commitment to come back. Patricia, IGA will set it up. I am available to come back. And as
I don't mean to cut you
off. I'm committing. I'm like the debate the other night. Who couldn't commit? I'll commit.
Jocelyn.
Yes, Tim.
Patrick.
Patricia. Who answered me? Okay.
It was me. So when you come back to the community and you are talking about a permanent shelter, the community will want to know why you're looking at adult shelters and not potential adult male shelters and not potentially family shelters, when we are a community board uniquely qualified with our amazing schools to support families. And we have a large amount of public schools down here. There's a large amount of community welfare and opportunity for family shelters. We do not have support services. You have to bring everything in for a men's shelter. So we would like to be a part of that dialogue in the community to try and help what we can.
So
because the comments that
could I just say
you're telling us we're getting an adult male temporary
No.
shelter and in a permanent shelter.
I think we're conflating two things. Right now, the men, single men from the Lucerne are coming. Our plan is not to make it a single adult men's shelter, it's an adult family shelter, right? So it is, we can't, because the building doesn't have kitchens, make it a families with children shelter. However, my census of families with children has been declining. Families are not coming into shelter, and even before the pandemic, that number has been going down. The theaters right now,
No offense,
have a single men coming in.
You need to wait 6 months when evictions.
I absolutely hear that. I absolutely hear that, right?
What we see in Community Board 1 is insane because people cannot pay their rents. We've had this dialogue. We've had families and people come to us already. So that is part of the discussion that we would hope that you would be open to looking ahead.
I am open to, Tammy, in the community board, bringing us buildings that could be families with children shelters. They have to have kitchens. They cannot be congregate, right? So this is a different setup. If there are no kitchens, I can't use it as a families with children shelter. Adult families, because there's two different regulations, one that follows families with children, Part 900 from the state, single men, single women, adult families, Part 491. So I can't use this building, but if there are buildings, in 6 months, if there's we start seeing people coming in, I certainly would welcome from you all any buildings that you think could be a families with children shelter. But before
I just need to interrupt you all.
I'm sorry, Patricia.
I'm sorry. It's 7:27. No, you're not. No, you're not. But it's 7:27. You have a hard stop at 8. Tammy, Tiffany Winbush said that you. Okay, well, Tiffany.
Did I skip Tiffany?
You skipped Tiffany, yeah, and she's with Friends of FIDI, and she'd like to speak. First of all, Patrick, are you finished?
I did have one more quick question, if it's okay. And I just want to, because thank you, Jocelyn, for committing to come back more. And as often as you can come back, I think that'll be helpful, because one thing that this community needs right now, and that was lacking by this being dropped on a Friday night, is that we're living off of rumors and news reports. And I wonder if you can just quickly address, when is the planned move-in date? And then to perhaps dispel a rumor, can you confirm that no one has moved into that facility yet?
No one has moved into that facility yet, Patrick. We are anticipating the week of the 19th for most to happen. If the building is ready, we'll do it earlier, but nothing is happening next week. We are working now to prepare the building. We're working with project anticipation is not until the week of the 19th. I will tell you if it's ready early and I have an empty building, we could start, but our anticipation is a week.
And do you think you could have another meeting with us next week if we don't get, because it's 7:28 and we're not going to get to all the questions? Can we get a meeting next week with you?
I am game.
Okay, so we can talk about that later. Can we get Tiffany Winbush to speak, Tammy?
Yeah, sure. And Tiffany, I am very sorry. I thought that Corinne took your time, so
no, no problem. I'm Tiffany Winbush. Thanks for giving me a moment to speak. I just wanted to mention that I am a 15-year resident of the financial district. I live here along with my husband, and we are raising 2 kids here. And we often use that plaza that's near the Radisson for play, because like so many New Yorkers, we need that extra space. I think I'm here just to share the perspective of, a parent, and not only a parent, but a parent that realizes that we have homelessness in our community, and we know that it needs to be addressed. There has been, much to be said here about the lack of transparency that the city government and the mayor has provided with us. And I think that's one of the biggest and the main concerns that we have. If there are programs on the Upper West Side where these gentlemen are able to be successful, and this information has put into place, and we can clearly see that it's not efficient to do the move. The big question is, why is the move taking place? Because you're really re-traumatizing them when they're already going through a system where they're trying to better themselves. We've heard so many within our community who said, we could be here to support a family shelter. So if we know that permanently that's what wants to be done at that particular location, how can we then activate ourselves right now to begin to prepare so that we as a community can welcome that family shelter and be prepared to volunteer, provide resources, whatever it may be. surely I do not have an older kid, so I'm not in the position where my older kid has to walk by themselves. And I know that it's a concern of a lot of parents, but whether you have a younger kid or an older kid, that safety perspective is always going to be top of mind. I just want to say that, there have been so many voices within the community who said we are ready and we are ready to mobilize and help that shelter once it becomes a family shelter. So if we know that the process takes so long for a new shelter to get off the ground, why are we using energy now to focus on a temporary solution, which we should really be looking long-term at a long-term solution for that permanent shelter. So, I am just here speaking as a parent, not necessarily on behalf of parents, but really just, a subset of FIDI residents that know that, yes, we realize that there is an issue within the community. We see the unsheltered with the homeless encampments, and we know that there are people now who are housed into shelters. And we know that this needs to be an issue that has to be addressed, but transparency. I mean, we're all adults, right? We have on our big kids, pants. Let us know as soon as there's information. So as Patrick mentioned, people are not going off of press reports and rumors. The rumor mill has been just, out of control, but that's because we don't have any information. So people have to really make it up as they go. So, I really implore us to start focusing on the long-term issue of making sure we are housing people for the long term instead of looking at short-term solutions that aren't going to help anyone in the interim. So thanks for taking a moment to just listen to me this evening.
Thank you, Tiffany. I do want to remind everybody who is commenting in the chat and sending question and answers, this is a recorded meeting. This is a public meeting. So make sure that what you're saying is what you'd like to live in infamy in public realm forever. If you do, then great. If you don't, then I suggest you be careful on your comments because some have been inappropriate at best. And I am attempting to monitor, but that goes to the YouTube channel as well. We don't advocate violence. We don't advocate for nastiness. This has got to be decorum. And I am sorry to even have to make that announcement. So now returning back to the questions, Tiffany, did you direct a question back to Jocelyn or Project Renewal?
Yeah.
That needed an answer?
Yes, and actually some of it was asked when Patrick was speaking, but we talked about the proposal process to getting that family shelter off the ground. So what do we need to do as a community to help push that along, to help to be mobilized and prepared when it is in our neighborhood? Because if we have enough time to plan, we can serve as a resource to those families within the family shelter.
Can I just jump in for a second? Because Jocelyn, I think you made it clear that it's adult families, not families and small children.
I was going to say that it's adult families. There's no one in the family under 18. They are sometimes a mom, along with an adult son, a son with a mom he's taking care of, or a daughter. There's so they do two different regs. But I do think folks experiencing homelessness appreciate and welcome any service, or Tiffany's not just families with children under 18. This particular building cannot have families with children under 18, but there is a letter the commissioner sends out every year asking for community boards to bring us buildings that
You're breaking up, Jocelyn. Sorry.
I said, I'm sorry, I keep falling back. I say annually the commissioner sends a letter out saying, do you have buildings you could bring to us to create whatever shelter you think the building can be used for. But because it's not families with children under 18, there still is a need once we get the proposal, once we make those connections, whatever provider will be doing services there. We absolutely welcome any community, a member, any community organization to work with whoever the provider is there to help with the residents that will be placed in the particular shelter.
Thank you. It's 7:35. We've got to move along since you have a hard stop at 8. Tammy, who did you want to do? Rosa?
We've got Rosa, Justine, and Andrew. And then I did get another question that has been coming from many of the community board members around. And it is, if these men are being moved to an adult men's shelter, why is it not possible to help the men who are currently on the streets in the neighborhood? And that is a fair question to ask. As the numbers recede, you've receded numbers on the Upper West Side. You're moving 240, 235, not 287. As the numbers recede in this temporary vision, especially with it getting cold, what about the people on our streets in our community?
So I talked earlier about the population of those who are unsheltered on the street and what needs they have. We've been able to, since May actually, open 1,100 beds for those who are unsheltered on the street. It does take lots of engagement, and so outreach providers are out doing that work. So it's parallel tracks. So the folks who are unsheltered on the street, we do have providers doing that work to bring them in. We continue to do that. That's 24 hours a day. It's 7 days a week. It never ends.
But they're not eligible to go to this location, correct?
Well, they could be, right? Every person who comes into our system, except those unsheltered, come through our intake, right? So if a person wants to get a bed, they have to go through our intake. For those unsheltered, it's a different process. Those who are on the street. So if there's a person, Jocelyn is on the street and I want to come in and I want to go to this particular bed and we have space, we are making it possible for that to happen. It does take, though, really, really strong engagements over time for that to happen. People, they have to build trust. They have to make connections. They have to feel safe in coming in. But we've been able to make that happen. And I talked earlier about 18. 18 may seem like a small number, but for 18 people who have been entrenched on the street, that is a big number for us. He talked about the end of line, people down on the end of line. We've been engaging and getting people to come in on that through that initiative. It's not the easiest work for those who are sheltered on the street. So yes, if people wanted to come into shelter, we would find a bed for them. It's hard for those who've been on the street.
Okay.
So that is a possibility.
I hear you, but the answer, I hear you. It's not a direct yes or no question, which is really kind of what I was asking. I'm gonna go, we have Rosa, Justine, Andrew, Mariama, and Michael Francoeur. Unmute yourselves, make sure we're speedy so we can get some answers and succinct. Just Rosa.
Okay, thank you so much, Tammy and Patricia and CB1 for arranging this emergency forum for our community to get informed and voice their concerns. And I just wanted to point out that this type of community engagement is actually what the mayor's office should have been organizing and having with us. For full disclosure, I am also the president of the condominium board of 20 Pine Street, which is a 408 unit condominium just one block away from 52 William. So I am expressing some of the concerns that have been shared with me in that capacity as well. We're not all born with the same opportunities and challenges. We recognize this, and I very much recognize my own fortune in life. And diversity of people and experiences and viewpoints is one of the most amazing things about being in New York City. Especially in these challenging times, we need to give each other, including the people who are currently experiencing homelessness, some compassion. And I hope that we are able to do that tonight. But where I draw the line is safety. The city has a responsibility to provide a safe public realm, and I do not support a city action that would increase incidences where I am threatened with physical violence on the streets. Not every homeless person undergoing treatment for substance abuse and mental health issues will be violent or is violent, but it is inevitable that congregating 235 men with a history of these issues in a single building without exterior space will increase violent events throughout the neighborhood. I'm voicing the concerns of our community when I express that we do not want to be walking down our exceptionally narrow sidewalks fearful for our safety. And I'm not talking about the perception of safety, I'm talking about the actual physical safety. Vanessa from PACE pointed out that her students are actually concerned because they are being followed and actually physically harassed on the streets. So it's actual physical safety. The fact sheet from Project Renewal that I saw earlier today and this presentation tonight just do not reassure me that there have been sufficient steps and considerations taken to ensure that our physical safety is intact within our own neighborhood. And the constantly changing statements of what is proposed at 52 William, which is, permanent versus temporary, family versus single men, it doesn't give me the confidence that this is anything other than a fly by the seat of your pants effort to move the men out of the Lucerne, as has been stated by all the previous speakers. Lastly, on a totally separate note, I notified the Radisson building management on August 16th that the roof of their water tower had blown clear off, and that the water tank was left open to the elements, including pollution and vermin. And they left it untouched for over a month. And so since this is actively being used as a COVID shelter, were you even made aware that the water that you have been drinking there has been compromised since at least August 16th?
Thank you, Rosa. Jocelyn, I don't know if you have any follow-up or know anything about the facility.
I don't know anything about that, and I'll certainly look into that.
Is that a question that Eric and Jody could answer? Since they have...
No, because Eric and Jody is not at this site right now. We do use...
but I thought they did a walkthrough.
I don't know anything about any water issues. I'll certainly follow up with that, Rosa.
Okay, well, the tank was literally, the roof was blown clear off, and there were big gaping holes at the roof of the water tank, and it was left that way until very recently.
We can send you photos.
When this ends, I could, follow up as soon as we get off of this chat.
Yeah, and this is Lucian from CB1. The Department of Environmental Protection and Department of Buildings have both been notified and are responding to our office about what next steps should be taken in terms of inspections for safety and water quality.
And then I just want to jump in because...
Thanks, Rosa, for letting us know.
Yeah, I want to jump in because... I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that I certainly will follow up. I had not we will
and just a quick answer to Rosa's question. So the concern is about how many people are being treated for mental illness and for substance
abuse.
Yeah. So can you give us that information? If you can't supply it tonight, can you supply it to us next week at our meeting?
You're asking me numbers of people who are...
Well, or percentage even.
This is I don't have numbers or percentages. I think lots of us all have some mental disorder.
No, but I mean these 235 people.
I don't know the answer to that, Patricia.
Okay, all right. So,
all right.
Sorry, Rosa.
Justine is next.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here and for speaking. And so, okay, I'm gonna go quick. I have three topics I wanna touch on. Number one, Jocelyn, thank you so much for all you're doing and your approach to everything. I have a real issue with the misinformation that's being put out there. I think part of the reason why there has been such a vehement, as far as I'm concerned, it's a vehement response against these gentlemen being moved downtown is because they're being labeled sex offenders, drug users, criminals. I think you need to get back to us with information as to the population. What are their issues? What's the deal? Are they really dangerous? Are they people who are not dangerous? These are things that you should know because you've been working with them. I so love to hear what Corinne said, because from her perspective, these are people who would be welcome in our neighborhood because they are not going to be following students home and attacking them or threatening them. They are people who would be very welcome and happy to be in this neighborhood. That's number one. So information and stopping the misinformation that's out there, because the only way to combat, I'm sorry, but it's hate, it's fear, is information. So please provide that. Number two, I challenge the public officials that are on the call right now, if they're still here, as well as Jocelyn and whatever your superiors are in your agency. It is an unreasonable rule or a situation that you need a kitchen to put families with children into a shelter, especially looking at where we are now in the world. Every one of those hotels have refrigerators and microwaves and coffee machines and sinks. That is enough to feed breakfast and possibly lunch. And you can take, I understand the rules are what they are. I get that. I'm saying to you, change the rules. You don't have to tell me what the rules are. I get it. And obviously you have no power by yourself, but I'm thinking that we really should make a movement and push to change the rules, because there are things that can be done that will change and make it feasible. Okay. Every one of those places have food available outside. There can be vouchers given to the children can get hot meals. The children get hot meals at school. They'll be getting breakfast and lunch at school. And then you have there are so many ways to address this situation. And by saying to our neighborhood, who is opening and welcoming with open arms families with young children to our schools, the 11 schools that, I forget his name, but I think it was Christopher, the gentleman said that all in the neighborhood, they're all there. My children went to those schools. They're excellent schools. And how wonderful would it be to give these people, these people who are houseless or homeless, and these children the opportunity to be with our kids, and for our kids to be interacting with them. It's insane. Sorry, that's wrong. It is unreasonable situation. And I understand why there is a rule there. I think that it needs to be changed. I think it needs to be addressed differently. And I think it's time to change the rules.
Sorry, Justine, we got to move on.
Okay,
Keep going.
is for an answer, if she has it. What does this all cost at the shelter in Lucerne? What does it all cost downtown? That's all I have to know.
Well, can I just answer a few things? Just a few things first. I said earlier, and I'll continue to say, that families with children need to be able to be in places just like you and me, with and the regulations of the state, and I believe in them, right? So that's something that I will ever tell you I'm going to fight to change. And at this point, we don't need families with children settings. We have more than enough at this point, and we have a trajectory to bring more on. So let's park that. But I also want to say that the folks who are with us are not unlike you and me, right? Not unlike you and me. And so I don't think we should be coming back and saying, oh, Jocelyn Carter has this disease and Jocelyn Carter has this substance abuse problem. I absolutely don't think that's correct. I can tell you that it's not something I'm going to be doing. Hold on, Justine. Let me finish what I'm saying to you. And so it is for us to be talking about specifically about what these individuals have. Don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. Every person and every family have situations. It's a mixture of whoever or whatever they bring, and we work to stabilize the individuals and the families that we work with. I am not coming back to you with percentages of who has what. That's something Tammy and Patricia I'm not going to do. And I certainly don't expect that Project Renewal would do that either. I think there is a way for us to work together without labeling the folks that are in our system, in the Lucerne, coming to the Radisson, or any other part of our system. These are humans. These are not people who we have to say, oh, that person has this, I disagree with that. I absolutely disagree with that. And so the validation of our folks that I serve, and I serve because I love my job, and I was, doubled up as a child, could have been homeless. And so I recognize that people look at me and say, but I have been right there to be homeless. If my aunt didn't take us in, we would have been homeless. It's passionate to me. And I don't want to tell you that my mom has X, Y, and Z when you ask me who was that homeless person. That is not okay.
I understand what you're saying. And if I could just respond to say this, the reason why I'm asking is not because I care, and I think there are people.
Justine, no, I'm going to have you not respond. Okay. Justine, we're running out of time. We need others to speak. Andrew,
7:49.
Mariama.
Tammy,
Andrew and Mariama.
Tammy, I'll cede my time.
Mariama, thank you, Andrew. Mariama, you're next.
Hi. As Tammy said, I'm Mariam. I'm a member of this board, but I think I want to speak more as a resident of this neighborhood, respecting the reason that I'm getting the opportunity to speak is because I am a member of this board. But I think I'd rather speak as a resident of Lower Manhattan, of Gold Street, for my entire life. And sort of like the resident 9/11 person, there are a number of people on the board who are advocates for 9/11 health issues, but I have been literally since 2002, since I addressed then President Bush from the World Trade Center, as reported by Reuters. You can look it up if you want to. That's how long I've been doing this. So I've been really bothered by the fact that 9/11 health has not come up when we are in the midst of a pandemic. The CDC guidelines suggest that people not be moved during the pandemic, okay? Unless there is an overflow to sites to accommodate shelter decompression or to reduce crowding and higher shelter demands, or isolation sites for people who are confirmed to be positive for COVID-19, or quarantine sites for people who are awaiting to be tested or know that they were exposed to COVID-19, or protective housing for people who are at increased risk of severe COVID-19. So automatically homeless people are at increased risk for COVID-19, but so is the lower Manhattan community. Most people here have many, many additional comorbidities to COVID-19 by virtue of being 9/11 survivors. And I think the fact that the mayor continues to not take this into consideration, that we are in the midst of a pandemic, this is a health crisis, is abhorrent. It is disgusting. I mean, I could come up with a whole list of words. I think the fact that he is not here is disgusting. I'd rather talk to him a la Clint Eastwood empty chair than address my concerns to you at DSS or DHS, because I do not blame you. This is his fault. We're talking about this thing as if it is a fait accompli. That is disgusting. We should not be talking about we're moving them into the facility. They're coming. That's what I keep hearing you saying. I'm angered. My neighbors are angered. My friends are angered because we did not have conversations before we got to this juncture. We need to roll this whole thing back. I would call upon the other elected officials that are here that they insist that the mayor's office attend these meetings. He's not sending people out like sheep to represent him. He's too afraid to address the issues. And that this not be allowed to happen until there is real dialogue, real conversation from everybody that's involved and everybody that will be impacted, including the homeless people that are there and the homeless people that are here, that live in our community. We have our own homeless population. The same mayor came in here in July and ripped people from City Hall because they were homeless. That was his reasoning. They weren't, and it turned out the majority were not even homeless. These were residents of New York. They were protesting. Some were homeless. Those that were not homeless were helping those that were. There were doctors over there, nurses over there, psychologists over there. I know for a fact I met them and they're on recording. We have all the data if anybody wants to see it. He ripped those people from their home that they'd made for themselves at City Hall by virtue of them being homeless, and then closed City Hall, not only to the homeless, but to this neighborhood, to the taxpayers, to the people that elected him, closed the entire perimeter, forcing pedestrians, including mothers with strollers and children and seniors and people with disabilities, into the street, facing oncoming traffic. That's how we had to walk for up to 5 blocks at any side, given side of City Hall. So on the Park Row side, all the way up to Duane Street, around to Broadway, it was all closed from the literal perimeter of the park, including the sidewalk. We could not.
Sorry, Mariama. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's 7:54.
Okay, so the mayor, long story short, the mayor needs to come to these things. I really don't have much to say to you, Jocelyn, although I respect and appreciate you for being here. Thank you.
We have 6 minutes.
I will say, at 6 minutes, I will say, what you're hearing, not only for a lack of engagement, but there is a lack of planning, and it is seemingly dehumanizing. It's a horrible thing to do to the people up there to move them when there's advocacy and money and success to destabilize them. That in itself, none of us are agreeing with. We have worked with DHS. We have worked with Project Renewal. You have come to our community board meetings. We have supported helping the homeless throughout this issue. We've worked with you guys and with the city on sanitation issues and other issues. So we are not a community that does not care. We are a community who cares about the people who are actually living on the streets here. We are a community that cares about the rising sense of homelessness, the impending doom for evictions for families and other people. We are a community board who has rebounded after 9/11, Sandy, you name it, you've thrown it at us. But we have also seen the mayor throw people out of City Hall Park, have endangered things. Plans, we want a plan. We want to know the plans are in place. We do not want to be responsive. Those days are done. We want to see the plans in advance. We don't think those people, we agree with Gail Brewer, we don't think that these people should have to be forced to move. If Jocelyn, you went to these men and they said, out of the 235, 80 of them said, get me out of here. We need to go. We want to be someplace else. I would think that that was a humane thing that you could offer them and plan accordingly and give Project Renewal the opportunity to plan for a building. But we're talking about moving in what's justifiably 3 weeks. And you don't even know if the water tower is fixed because the developer hasn't said anything. There's so many things in here that need to be looked at. And there are more questions that keep coming up. You know, how does security work? Project Renewal can come back to us and answer many of the curfew questions and safety and security questions and the operation questions. But no one has yet been able to answer, as Mariama and everyone has said, the basic question that we have asked that you cannot answer other than it's a mayor's directive. And he needs to answer for that. These people are safe and secure and you're ripping them out of their place. We're not saying we don't want them because they're homeless. We're saying, is it inhumane what you're doing? We also want to help the people who are in the streets of CB1. There are no places, as you've stated, that people can come off the streets in CB1. And yes, we understand there are many places. They may not be appropriate for 52 million. Maybe they need to go to a different type of facility. But we want to see more action for the people who are here in CB1. Because we see them, we know them. They used to live in City Hall, some of them, because not everyone was a protester. There were homeless people there. But at the end of the day, the mayor doesn't see any of them because there are gates that he put up. And I think that's the problem that we have, is you are doing the best you can with the resources and services you have. And I appreciate you coming and listening and being a part of this meeting to hear all this. We don't want to hear that it's a fait accompli. We want to be able to plan for the community, to help the homeless here, help whoever needs help. But we want to make sure that this is a plan. This isn't just a knee-jerk reaction because he's chosen to pit community against community to the detriment of a group of people who are happily getting services, according to Open Heart and others.
I mean, they're caught in the
Tammy,
middle.
if I could just jump in and add, we asked the mayor's office via DHS 2 months ago, could we use the hotels in our neighborhood that are closing for low-income housing, for homeless people, other low-income people, for our neighbors, for our friends that are being evicted. Well, now it's been extended, but then it was a crisis. They're going to lose their homes. We don't want them to have to leave the neighborhood. Can we use these buildings? And we were told no, again, via DHS on behalf of the mayor, because the program was going to be temporary only, and he refused to use hotels as permanent housing for people.
But if this facility is being used for adult families, then it means that it can be used for people who don't have children under the age of 18. So the answer is really yes, that these hotels can be used as housing.
And that's kind of, you know, one of the things we've talked about long time in Community Board 1 is building a base of diversified, affordable housing downtown and being able to have the teachers, the city workers, you know, the kids from families in the neighborhood who cannot afford to rent down here. So thank you in a way to the city for proving proof positive that hotels can be turned into affordable housing, and maybe we can solve those crises instead of just moving people around, as well as our homeless.
It is 8 o'clock.
Very well.
It is 8 o'clock. I know you have to leave. I think that was the last.
Can I have opportunity to thank you
a closing
all?
word? Absolutely.
I am grateful for the time that you gave to me and to Project Renewal, and for the respect that you showed to us. I've been in other meetings that have not been the case. I know this is difficult. I know that you know, decisions were made that now we're working with and we're following up on. I do commit to coming back. I do understand. I've been doing this for a long time, so I understand the feelings, and I understand how your perception. I understand that. I got it. But you know, sometimes, and I said early on that I wouldn't tell you something that's not true. So you know, we are working to move the men, anticipating the week of October 19th. If the building is ready, we probably will move earlier, but we're shooting for that time. I'm hopeful that we can make connections and relationships. We can continue the dialogue. I'm hopeful that we could figure out ways to replicate some of the work that was happening in the Upper West Side. That Corinne gave us some ideas around. I'm hopeful that, knowing that Project Renewal's good service that they've been doing, that we can continue to make those connections with the Project Renewal staff. I'm hopeful. I mean, I think time is what we have, and we can certainly figure out how to use the time appropriately as we move towards that date. I can't tell you on this call that this is going to stop tomorrow. I cannot tell you that. But I do want to tell you that I am here to answer questions. I'm here to give you answers that I know. I did not know about a water tower issue. We're going to follow up on that immediately. But I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the respect of Patricia and Tammy. I certainly appreciate that elected officials are still on. And you know, you have my commitment to come back and to speak to all of you.
Jocelyn, I'd like to thank you, and Eric and Jody.
We want to thank you. Before you leave, can Project Renewal stay on to answer some of the questions about program, security, and other things that were asked? They may not know the cost to transfer the people from the Upper West Side down and the overall budget and whatever the city is paying for the hotel, but they can answer the questions about services that they offer. There's been lots of questions on security in terms of how does curfew work? How does, where are people allowed in and out? Are there, is this a type of facility that people are only told that they have to leave during the day? Those kinds of questions are really important for quality of life things, and we'd like to know how that happens. We are, of course, sad that it's not going to offer options for the street people on our streets, but we want to know what services are offered for these people. How does security work for the community, right? And what services are able to be replicated from the Upper West Side, and which ones aren't, that you're going to have to do before you move? And will all the services be available before you move in?
I don't want to speak for Eric and Jody in terms of staying on. I know that we are able to do another meeting or two to answer those questions, but I leave that. I don't want to talk to you, Eric or Jody, but I'm certainly willing to come back and to answer those questions, to be present, to help. The questions you might have for the Department of Homeless Services.
So maybe we can jump on email tomorrow and try to figure out a date, schedule a date.
Eric
for next
nodded,
week.
so if Eric is available and Jody is available, if you are okay with them answering more questions about their fact sheet and their services, I think for the, even if you, I think that would certainly help the community. Eric, Jody, you good with that?
Sure. I'm certainly willing to stay for a while longer.
Okay. Thank you guys, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Okay. So,
do you want us to?
Eric, you have many questions that came about security. So that's security and services.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really, I think, probably great. If I can find the link from the community board website, we did post your fact sheet. So that is out in the realm, but it would be good, and I can certainly take questions. I'm trying to read them along about other services. Those were the biggest, broadest categories, and I'm going to go through and see if I can find the other ones as well.
Okay, I'll make a few general comments about safety in general, and then Jody can fill in any other blanks. I totally understand the question about safety on the streets. Without pitting one group of homeless people against another, I do want to say there is a huge difference between people who are on the streets and have refused services and help, and people who have agreed to be in shelter and accept the services and the constraints and the rules that come with living in shelter. And while there was enormous a number of reports and photos and statements about violence associated with the Lucerne, the fact is that there were no incidents of violence. There were no arrests for violence of our clients at the Lucerne, and there were no investigations by the police department for that. So I totally understand the concern, but there were absolutely men who didn't behave so well, who violated the good neighbor policy, and eventually, as Jody said, we moved many, if not most of them, to other places where we felt the environment was more appropriate for the challenges that they were facing. And to be honest, the 235 men who are now at the Lucerne, first of all, if you were to talk to the head of the 79th Street Block Association, she would tell you that the situation today is remarkably quiet, that the men are not out on the streets, congregating in ways that make people uncomfortable or nervous. I actually live 5 blocks from the Lucerne. I walk it quite often. I've seen that myself. But the men who are there now, they've kind of learned the drill. And I suspect that whether or not they're happy about being moved downtown, they have a much deeper appreciation for what they're getting into, and will be pretty respectful if they're not downright scared themselves. So that's just some context about the population themselves. Inside the building, as Jody said, we'll have lots of security, and we're having the hotel install security cameras in almost all of the visible locations so that we can record what we can't see directly. We will have staff that will be walking around the neighborhood. Some of that will be uniformed security, and some of it will be engagement specialists who are really peers who know the population, know who we're working with, and if they see our clients out on the street, they can engage with them. And we'll have ways for people in the neighborhood to connect directly with us, so that if you see something happening like right now, there's always someone at the shelter who will respond to that, and we certainly will. And that's no different than the process that we have at all of the other hotels that we've been operating, all of which have been kind of remarkably quiet. That's kind of an overview of safety and security, and I'll let Jody talk more about some of the details and also finish what she was starting to talk about, the services that were available inside. Oh, one last thing. All of the staff that will be working at this hotel are the same staff that are working at the Lucerne, and they're all the same staff who are working at the 3rd Street and Kenton shelters with these men. So the staff and the budget associated with the services we provided has all moved with the men. There's no reduction. In fact, there's some increases in funding and services. So the program is essentially the same. We've had to obviously reconfigure the spaces in which we offer it, but the staff and the programs are really the same as the ones they had in the shelter, the ones they've had in the Lucerne. Jody?
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric you said much of it. I just wanted to add, because a question about curfew keeps coming up. There is a 10 p.m. system-wide curfew that DHS imposes. This does not mean that we lock our door. Our front door is open on a 24/7 basis to all of our shelters. But clients who come in after 10 p.m. at night risk losing their bed. So for clients who come in after 10 p.m., we sit them in a chair, we give them a snack, and we go through a process with DHS centrally, because they're sort of the managers of capacity across the single adult shelter system. And a determination is made as to whether we're supposed to then give the client a bed at the Lucerne or the Radisson, as the case may be, or whether DHS is going to provide transportation for that client to another available bed within their system. So there's no barrier to coming inside, and there's no ejection of someone out on the street. The question that comes up when people miss that 10 p.m. threshold is whether they will in fact secure a bed at that specific site, or whether they'll get a different bed within the DHS shelter system. And there's typically transportation that comes along with that when at night, associated with a change in placement associated with missing curfew.
And and you will see people coming in and out of the shelter after 10. That doesn't mean that we're not enforcing the curfew. Some of our clients work and have jobs, and obviously if they have a pass for work, they'll come and go based on what their work hours are. There was also a question about what they do during the day. There used to be a rule that people had to leave shelters during the day because it was presumed that that they should be out working or looking for a job or getting their benefits. I think that rule was eliminated several years ago, and we do not push anyone out. And even if we were thinking of doing something like that, it would be the last thing we'd be wanting to do during a pandemic, because the point is to keep people as socially isolated or socially distanced as possible. So no one is pushed out into the streets during the day, and we will be offering a full scope of programming, and including, as Jody said, 12-step programs, meetings with their caseworker or entitlement specialists or peer engagement folks, or recreational programs that we'll be offering on site.
Okay. There were several questions about security as it amounts to why were people removed from the facility? I think it says here. Was it for security breaches, basically, or criminal activities? Are they removed? And if so, what happens to them?
Yeah, Jody, go
Sure. We had transferred out a couple dozen clients from the Lucerne based on repeated violations of our good neighbor policy. And our good neighbor policy has several different components. We're essentially encouraging our clients to be good neighbors. So we're prohibiting a lot of noise in the community, external to the building, yelling, screaming, those types of things. We're discouraging loitering and people hanging out. And again, we use our engagement specialists and our security guards to engage clients who are congregating outside the facility or on the block to encourage them to come back in for services. Use of drugs and alcohol are against our good neighbor policy. Public intoxication, smoking inside the building is prohibited, and congregating outside the building or in the community to smoke is also prohibited. Littering is prohibited, and we've added, of course, use of masks as required under our good neighbor policy. So repeated violations of the good neighbor policy can get you transferred out of the Lucerne or the Radisson, as the case may be. Some of our clients are more behaviorally complex, and can act out. And if that happens repeatedly in the community, we would certainly try to transfer them to a more appropriate facility. We think these transfers were really helpful at the Lucerne. Not only did it decrease our headcount by about 50 clients, but it created a more stable population of clients who we know better. So we feel like we have some harmony at this point in the community. I also wanted to add, in addition
Jody,
to yes.
I'm sorry, can I just interrupt you for a sec? If people can't smoke inside the facility and they can't smoke outside in front of the facility, where do you expect them to go to smoke?
So this is an issue that we have raised with DHS. We need to identify a place, and we very much think we should identify that and know what all of us know what it is before we move clients in. Otherwise, people will get angry. We need that.
Okay. Well, hopefully when you come back to the meeting next week, you'll have some more information on topics like that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Jody, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I think I wanted to add, you all heard from Corinne Lowe from Open Hearts, in addition to the scope of services that Project Renewal provides at the Lucerne through our contract with the city, the Open Hearts group really took it upon themselves to add an additional scope of support for the clients that we serve. So they've been doing voter registration events, spiritual walks, other group activities, doing chalking events to welcome and engage our clients. And that's been really meaningful. I've worked at the Department of Homeless Services for 13 years before coming to Project Renewal, and never quite understood what the best practice model looked like in terms of a community coalescing in a positive way around a shelter. And we feel like we've achieved that with Open Hearts, with the constellation of supported elected officials, with that program, as the borough president mentioned, that we were about to launch with Goddard Riverside. And all of that has really enhanced our programming at the Lucerne. It does make it heartbreaking to leave, and it also serves as sort of a best practice model that we'd want to replicate going forward, in all of our programming that Project Renewal operates, in terms of really cultivating those meaningful relationships with community groups that can be transformative in the lives of our clients.
One of the things that I'm saddest about in this move is that part of the Goddard Riverside program was something called greenkeepers. Everyone has observed that there's less trash pickup going on the streets. And so part of what we were going to do with them was they were going to offer employment and stipends to our clients to actually pair with them and go out into the immediate neighborhood and do beautification projects for which the clients would get paid. And they'd be visible in the community, actually doing something to help clean up the community. And we lost that with this.
You lost that with the potential move?
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking, quite frankly.
You bet.
I mean, it would be great if they would have that up there, and then we could replicate that down here for people who are living at the 6 Water Street shelter that you manage.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the ultimate win-win for everybody in the situation. But
yeah.
Question about mask enforcement.
Mm.
How do you enforce mask use and where?
I'm going to be honest. That is a tough one. I have been sent hundreds of pictures of people not wearing masks, with the assumption, by the way, that they're all our clients, and a lot of them aren't. But we have masks available constantly. We do enforce that someone is wearing a mask when they leave the hotel. The security guard checks that. All of our security guards and anyone who's roving has their pockets stuffed with masks. So if they see someone not wearing a mask, we give a mask. I was told that we distributed 10,000 masks in the first month that we were at the Lucerne. But when people are out in the streets, the enforcement of it is, it's a challenge. We talk about it all the time, but I'm not going to promise that you'll never see one of our clients not wearing a mask. It's a challenge.
And you talk about job training. Do they all receive job training? And what kind of job placement things is Project Renewal able to help them with?
Jody, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So 15% of the clients currently at the Lucerne have jobs. Not all of our clients are currently seeking employment, but for those who are interested, we have vocational counselors on site. We provide sort of tactical support around resume writing and interviewing and job search support, often in the food service sector, sometimes in the social services sector and the homeless services sector. We place clients in a variety of sectors. We also have a signature culinary arts training program, which is a 6-month program, and people leave with their food handler's certificate and placements at catering companies and restaurants. And all of the clients at the Lucerne or the Radisson will have that full scope of programming available to them.
I know it's in the fact sheet, but it's probably worth saying here that that City Beat Kitchens will be delivering individual packaged meals to the hotels, and we will be distributing those meals, 3 meals a day, to each person in their room. So we're not having congregate dining in a restaurant space or anything like that. And we'll connect with each person at least 6 times a day in their room to make sure that they're okay, to do temperature checks, and just to keep tabs on everybody.
And DHS comes on site every few weeks to do COVID testing for our men as well.
And if anyone is positive, they're immediately removed to an isolation hotel. Our recent testing results have been incredibly low. I think in the last month, we've had 4 positive results across all of Project Renewal.
Fantastic. I apologize. I'm trying to look through the questions as we're here. So one of the questions that came in is about community engagement after the shelter system has been set up. And because the comment that was made is temporary, has no time limit on it. According to what Jocelyn has said, she could not tell us how long temporary is. So what kind of process, once and if you are in place at 52 William, do you do with public engagement for feedback with the community?
So in a typical shelter situation, a CAB would be formed, a community advisory board, and that would meet more often in the beginning stages of a shelter when things are still settling in, and then usually they meet less often afterwards. We are certainly willing to meet, quite frequently if it's productive and constructive, absolutely. And we'll be walking around also. Charlie, our head of security, if he hasn't started it already, he'll make personal connections to all of the businesses in the neighborhood. He'll give his personal card so that people can reach out to him. He'll do that with any residential buildings in the neighborhood as well. The program directors will make themselves available also. So that's kind of informal, day-to-day basis engagement. But if you want to have more formal meetings, as long as they're constructive and helpful, we're happy to do it.
So one of the things that I did read through the chat a lot is that there are concerns. I'm happy to hear that Charlie's going to go around to the neighborhood. Downtown Alliance, actually, I know for a fact, needs some outreach and connection because they do so much work on our streets, and it would be very good for you to connect with them to work out for DSNY. There are still many people wandering the streets. So when you do outreach and things like that, and Charlie's walking around, is there any reporting if there are, to help the people that are on the street? DHS says there is. So how does DHS get the information? If while your security team is outside, if a homeless person comes to you and says, oh, I understand that this is a shelter and I'd like to come here, I understand that that's not possible. How do you help that person?
So that is a fantastic question, and it's a real challenge because there is frankly a disconnect, I think, between the various providers and what their roles are. We're not responsible for street outreach, and I know one of the problems that we will have is that neighbors are going to assume that anyone who appears to be homeless within a 1-block radius of the Lucerne is probably one of our clients. And there will be confusion about that. We typically don't engage with people who aren't our clients, and it is a coordination challenge. We don't know those people. Our security guards aren't really trained for engagement with strangers, around those kinds of things. That is something we need to work with you and DHS on how to handle that, particularly if there is a large population of street homeless people right in the immediate area.
That is a problem that we face that is over by 6 Water. And that is a problem that we will face at 52 William as well, because there are street homeless everywhere around Community Board 1. So that is going to be a concern that we have for you.
Can I ask you a question?
And how to...
Are there outreach workers today on the street all the time engaging with those people already? I mean, in other words, is the problem that they refuse to engage, or is the problem that there's not enough outreach workers?
Would the answer be yes?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I certainly think it'd be very fair and appropriate to ask DHS for some additional outreach workers in the neighborhood under the circumstances.
So, thank you. That would be great. Sorry, kids and husband running around the back of me. I apologize. So I think we've answered a lot of questions about the jobs. We've answered a lot of jobs about security. We've answered a lot of questions about you being able to help the people or not outside, but you would be able to report, I would assume, that with better resources and connections than we do to help get other people who cannot access your facility.
It's 8:28. How long?
Yep. I'm hoping to get through a couple other questions, maybe 10 minutes if you don't mind. Do you have any idea how long it usually takes you to set up a location? October 19th is a week of is a target that they mentioned. She said, or sooner. I think based on the conversations that we've had and the city's lack of notification, we understand that you're not moving in on the 5th, but what is a reasonable timeline? If nothing changes and they are not, how long does it normally take you to set up and transfer a property into an appropriate location for this type of a temporary shelter?
Well, I think we've certainly learned our lesson that doing it when it's too rushed means that the first few weeks you're both setting up and trying to serve people at the same time, and that results in disorder. So, we've certainly been pushing for more time, and there's a lot of negotiation happening around that. But really, we're still getting to know the property. I mean, we only saw it for the first time on Monday. I mean, Jody and I were there today because both of us were out for Yom Kippur. And we've been giving the Department of Homeless Services a list of what we see as the requirements in order for this to be set up to succeed, or to succeed as best as possible. they are absolutely working their butts off to try and get everything on that list done, and so are we. But some of it is, you know, it should be when it's done as soon as possible.
Is
I
that
think
typically a week, 2 weeks?
I mean, 3 to 4 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks is kind of really needed.
So I'm just going to put it out there and say it directly. As of this week, and when the mayor made the announcement on Friday, there were people being quarantined in that location. So there's no way the work could have possibly started until you get those the people who are currently there out. If you're talking 3 to 4 weeks, it is unconscionable to try and open the week of October 19th, because you won't be able to, you'll replicate the problems that you had uptown, downtown, by not having everything ready. So, I mean, at the very base, if nothing else, that seems to be number one, a priority, to get everything up safe and secure. The other thing, of course, is, you know, the community is concerned for, just like the Upper West Side, there's no different in terms of community concern for safety. There's a pre-K center, there are several schools. You've heard from PACE, you've heard from neighbors. So when you're talking about security outside, I think one of the things is to make sure that you are up, you are ready. It is absolutely a seamless connection, and that from the people from Open Heart said that everything that they have goes with them, that this is not a restart, which is really destabilizing for people and not fair.
Right. There's nothing that I disagree with.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, that came out a little snottier than I wanted it to be. I apologize about that. So a couple of people have asked the same questions of, if someone is turned away for cause or does not make quote unquote curfew, what services does Project Renewal offer or for them, and where do they go? Or do they just basically hang out outside the hotel beyond the security gates?
No, as Jody said, if someone's going to be transferred, we keep them inside the building until they're transferred. The DHS will actually come in a van, and they'll go in the van to the next place. We're never going to push someone out into the street. I mean, let's be clear. One thing we all know is that everyone is safer when people are sheltered getting services, as opposed to on the street not getting services. So it's not in our interest as a provider, nor just as, you know, compassionate people, to be kicking people out to a less safe environment for them and for the community, which is why it's not a zero tolerance situation. If someone's, you know, caught not wearing a mask, we don't kick them out. We try and engage with them to get them to wear the mask. And we're trying to attract and engage people towards better behavior, because that's the goal here. If the Department of Homeless Services takes that person to a different facility, that person will become the responsibility of that other provider. Often, because we're a large provider and we have multiple sites with multiple conditions, we're sometimes able to transfer the person within our own system to a more appropriate place. And that's usually better, because it means that we can maintain the continuity of relationships with the person. Sometimes we do that and sometimes we can't.
Okay. I apologize. I'm going to ask, I'm looking through the questions, and we had, you know, there are a lot of repeats, but we have over 400 questions that were emailed. So Pat, I'm going to ask if you remember any questions that had not been answered yet by Project Renewal.
Trying to think. No, I don't think so. And I'm not privy to those email questions. So no, I can't think of anything at the moment. I think it's 8:34. Why don't we adjourn and schedule a meeting for next week? That will also give us an opportunity to go over.
we'd like an update, clearly. We'd also love, if you don't mind, updating more of your fact sheet, and we'd be happy to post that and share that. We'd like information to help the public, help you. If you are ending up, even you are already in our neighborhood at 6 Water Street, and it would be important to know when the community sees things that are happening that are related to any of the shelter locations, who do they reach? How do they do the outreach? If they see someone who is not, I mean, obviously you can call 311 for the homeless to report a homeless person, and they either accept services or they don't, and we understand that. But the question is, what else can we do as a community, right, to help both you understand what's going on around your facility and the people on the street?
Well, can I interrupt here? You know, when we have people come, when we have developers come, we ask for a number that the public can use if we see a problem that we can contact someone. Is there a number that can be provided to someone in charge at the shelter so that we can publish and the public can use to call if there's a problem?
So in all of our shelters and in all of our hotels, except the Lucerne, we have a 24-hour number that goes directly to the desk at the hotel. So there's someone there who can respond. I have to say that what happened on the Upper West Side was that number got published widely, and the number was overwhelmed with people calling either to just vent or rant or complain about things that had nothing to do with us, and it became functionally impossible to actually respond. So that's going to be a challenge here.
Well, let's see if we can work something out, because maybe we can, you know, just, I don't know, maybe we can have our district manager have it. I don't know, but let's see, maybe we can think about that and discuss it again at our next meeting.
Because we do want to be able to respond immediately if something is happening like right here and now that people see. But if someone wants to call and complain about something they saw 3 days ago that might not have been one of our clients and there's nothing to identify, it's impossible.
All right, so let's think about it. You think about it, we'll think about it, and we can discuss it at our next meeting.
Yeah.
So
Tammy?
I want to thank you. I'm sorry. Yes, I apologize. I was typing an answer to somebody who asked about our location and being in a highly targeted area for terrorism, and another one commented about marches. I will say that if there is a protest and a march, I am sure that the shelter probably does the same thing every other residential building does along the way, and they station somebody at the door to prevent people from coming in. I mean, that seems like a reasonable comment that I could guess on. Eric's nodding. And in terms of the continuing terror threats of living down here in Community Board 1, all of us have the same one. So I would suspect if you are a resident, whether you live in a rental, a condo, a co-op, or a shelter, we all experience the same thing. And then a closing question, so we kind of understand for project renewal, because you are the city's contractor. If for any, you are still their contractor. So if the shelter plan changes and the Lucerne remains a location, you still remain with that location, correct? So you will be able to continue the work that you do with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you will still be remaining here handling 6 Water.
What? Oh yeah.
Like this does not negatively impact you guys.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
But we're also
Alrighty.
at water only on a temporary basis,
Right.
at the discretion of DHS until the threat of COVID subsides.
And it does, I mean, I'm sure people have heard the governor saying that shelters should be open, especially in his concern for the weather getting colder and things like that, you know, to be able to get more people off the streets. So that will in itself not allow de-densifying. And I'm not sure if you can comment in your operation hat how that will work.
So
like, for example, yeah.
So obviously none of us know when we're going to be, returning to shelter. And some of our shelters are still open. They're not all emptied, but the density is enormously reduced. We've had a task force internally that's gone through every single one of our buildings and identified what are the things that we think are needed in each building to make them as protective against COVID as is possible, given their nature as shelter. And things like putting up translucent PVC plastic barriers in between beds, or changes in the scheduling so that far fewer people are eating meals at the same time. We're doing all of that planning in anticipation of the day that we are moving back to shelter, but we don't know when or how that's going to be. And I don't think that guidelines have actually been issued yet for what the requirements will be, from the state or the city for shelters in that moment. So, I mean, we're doing it based on our best judgment and our knowledge of the facilities, but there's not like a formal set of guidelines that have been issued yet saying, do this, do this, do this, do this.
Gotcha. And is project renewal brought in after a location is determined, or are there people in project renewal who are part of the review team?
We found out about the Radisson Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock.
That kind of answers that for everybody. I mean, that actually makes me even sadder than anything else, because that means that, yeah, notice. Okay, I think we've gotten everything.
It's Brian. Can I just jump in for
Brian.
one clarifying thing? Your observation that the the existing use of the facility delays sort of startup, the review and startup operations. Is that, Eric, at what point do you get, you do not yet have access to this facility? And
No, we some of our team visited it on Monday, and Jody and I saw it today. So we put together an initial list of requirements and challenges to be overcome based on Monday's visit. And we've been revisiting it and updating it as we get to know the building better. But it's, yeah.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, and DHS is, I think, not here, but just how realistic. We had DHS come here and say that they're trying to do it by the 19th, maybe sooner, which is, I think, a little mysterious for people. But how realistic is it that this could be actually, you could have that operation up and running in 18 days from now?
Well, I mean, yeah. We certainly have moved into hotels previously with that amount of time or less. But we learned that while we were getting the men into rooms, we were still getting the wiring and the IT connections and the computers and the printers and the access to cares and the ability to set up schedules, and all of that stuff was happening in parallel with the men already living there. And that's what we'd like to avoid this time around.
How much time would be necessary to do that?
A lot of it, I mean, some of it is dependent less on time and more on effort. But this is very compressed.
Okay, well, we'll continue that. I think that, I'd maybe consider that an open question here, like when you'll learn more, and again, I appreciate that you and I've met in various circumstances, but I appreciate your being here tonight and your expertise. But I think to the extent we're scheduling a follow-up, I think we're going to you'll know more even in 2 days or something.
Yeah.
I'll end there. Thank you.
So I think, thank you, Brian. I think that's a good way to close it down for now. We would certainly seek and long for more information and to hear back from a mayor's office and things like that. We appreciate everybody's time and attention on this call. It is a very, very important topic as we take care of people who need help and the people in Community Board 1 who still need help, who are on the streets, and we look ahead for what we can do in the upcoming months and years. So we look forward to a continued dialogue. Jody, Eric, thank you very much. I know Jocelyn's not here anymore, but Erin, please tell her we send our great thanks. And Leilani, thank you very much. For everyone who spoke tonight, thank you. For those I did not get a chance to call on, I am hoping we got most of the questions answered. All of the questions have been shared. We'll be trying to pull up others. So if we did not get to something, we will try and get the information out to you or for the next time they return.
Also, Tammy,
Yulene, yeah.
If I encourage the members of the community, if you have questions that you weren't able to ask, or if you think of something new, please send those questions into the community board so that we can address them next time we meet.
I'll also say,
and for those,
sorry, we put up a web page when we moved into the Lucerne with information about it that's more extensive than what's on the fact sheet. So for instance, bios of our healthcare leadership team, our clinical staff, some more information about, so if people want to go there, it's Project Renewal /Lucerne. I guess we'll change it from, /Lucerne to /Radisson or something. But there is more information about who we are and the services that are available, that's available there.
That's good to know.
Eric, I don't want to sound snarky, but you might not want to change that email address because this will be their 4th location. At this point, I'm not 100% confident that there won't be a 5th or 6th, so I'd be careful.
Thanks.
I want to thank Gail Brewer and Yulene for coming. And Gail, I hope definitely that group of money and jobs does not disappear for these people, and perhaps they can truly look at de-densifying. So if there are jobs up there for people, people can stay there to have their jobs. And for other people, they can move to other locations to make it a win-win for everybody at that location who needs services. So thank you, everybody. If you want to stay in touch with Community Board 1, you can certainly sign up to be on our mailing list. We do have a YouTube. If you are on YouTube, you can follow us there as well. And we have our Quality of Life Committee coming up. Stay in touch with us through our website. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Great job.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you for pulling this
Especially you, Tammy. Thank you.